Chapter 751. Looking at the intense battle between Zhu Yi and Xiao Qingcheng, Tide Hark Sword Venerable, Dao Venerable Changlu, Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, and Devouring Sun Great Sage all fell silent. As bystanders, they had clearly witnessed everything that had just happened. Although Xiao Qingcheng's Yuan spirit avatar had only returned to its human form for a short moment, both sides had actually been locked in a stalemate for a period of time. Zhu Yi's four symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation and Saints Chapter had worked together to seal off Xiao Qingcheng's attack. However, if this went on for a long time, Xiao Qingcheng was a Yuan spirit venerable after all. Under Zhu Yi's defense, it would be difficult to guarantee her safety. Once a gap appeared in any part of Zhu Yi's four symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation and Saints Chapter, Xiao Qingcheng would be able to draw upon the power of the stars in the sky again. At that time, her power would skyrocket. Even if Zhu Yi could control the supreme sacred ancient robe, it would be difficult to say who would win. However, during this stalemate, Zhu Yi did something that left everyone dumbfounded. While fighting with Xiao Qingcheng, he flew out of his Yuanying and began to try to condense the universal Dharma form. Zhu Yi's current Yuanying looked like he had when he was in his teens. A thick branch of the cloud forest tree appeared above his head and a huge amount of spirit qi immediately poured down. With such a huge amount of spirit qi, Zhu Yi would not be at a disadvantage when facing Xiao Qingcheng in terms of Dharma power. While a huge amount of spirit qi strengthened the supreme sacred ancient robe, Saints Chapter, and four symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation, it also poured into Zhu Yi's Yuanying, causing his Yuanying to grow rapidly. All the essence of Zhu Yi's Dao techniques that he had learned in his life gathered together and gradually formed a huge human silhouette. "He's courting death," Devouring Sun Great Sage said decisively. Breaking through realms of cultivation was never something that could be accomplished overnight, especially when condensing the universal Dharma form was even more difficult. Breaking through in the middle of an intense battle did indeed happen, but in most cases, those who attempted to break through were killed by their opponents before they could succeed. Because this was equivalent to being distracted in the middle of a battle. If you weren't that much stronger than your opponent, doing this would 99% be courting death. The other party didn't even need to actually attack you. Just a slight interruption or interference would cause you to directly go berserk. This kind of victory was easy, clean, and didn't hurt anyone's hand. Anyone would like it. However, Zhu Yi still did it without hesitation or fear. He raised his hand and wrote in the air. Light and dark characters appeared one after another, merging with a huge amount of essence energy and pouring it into the huge human figure above. The four spirit images of the dragon, phoenix, tortoise, and qilin appeared once again and merged into the human statue. Suddenly, a giant with 4 faces and 8 arms appeared in front of everyone, sitting cross-legged on a huge qilin. An azure dragon coiled around his body, and a phoenix circled above his head, letting out a series of clear cries. 4 faces faced the 4 directions, each with a different expression. One face was steady and dignified, one face was calm and indifferent, one face was fierce, and one face was carefree and unrestrained. The images of the 8 trigrams formed his 8 arms, divided into 4 pairs, corresponding to the 4 faces. One pair of hands was holding a thick book, one pair was calmly writing on a piece of paper, one pair was holding a ruler, and one pair was playing a zither. In the air, the huge zither landed on the back of a giant tortoise, which silently lay beside the giant. Countless light and dark characters gathered to form a moral essay, overflowing with a scholarly aura, floating up and down beside the giant. Xiao Huayang and the others were too far away, and their divine senses weren't enough to see the ongoing battle clearly. They could only see that in the blurry light and shadow, Xiao Qingcheng's star calamity's supernatural power seemed to have the power to tear the heavens and earth apart, bombarding continuously on Zhu Yi's 4 symbols Great Cycle Formation and the Book of the Saints. Seeing that Xiao Qingcheng had the upper hand and was suppressing Zhu Yi to the point that he could only defend, Xiao Huayang and the others all showed expressions of satisfaction. "You are indeed admirable to have such supernatural power at the middle Yuanying stage, but because of this, you have lost yourself and can't see how much strength you have. Provoking an essence soul cultivator will only result in your own humiliation. Arrogant and conceited, I will see you fall today. You have been used to having a smooth life in the past, but after today's setback, even if your Tao heart isn't clouded, your cultivation will stagnate for a long time. I will definitely surpass you and achieve the essence soul first, and then I will only leave you further and further behind. I sincerely hope that Mother will spare your life this time. In the future, I will personally defeat you and kill you to avenge today's humiliation. But at this moment, on the Golden Bridge, a huge figure suddenly appeared. Sounds of reading came from the void, and light rain sprinkled down. Xiao Huayang and the other Yuanying and Golden Elixir period cultivators were all stunned. Tide Observing Sword Master, Red Thunder Dragon King, Chang Le Dao Master, and Devouring Sun Great Saint, the 4 Essence Soul cultivators were also slightly surprised. Xiao Huayang and the others could not see clearly, but they could clearly see that Zhu Yi was really withstanding Xiao Qingqing's attack while condensing his heaven and earth form. Not only that, Xiao Qingqing's attack seemed to be accelerating the condensing speed of Zhu Yi's heaven and earth form. Although Zhu Yi himself was on the verge of collapse and his face was getting paler, his Yuanying stage was still growing, and the huge heaven and earth form above his head was getting clearer and clearer. With the help of the fight with the Essence Soul Cultivator, he sorted out and comprehended his own Tao law, getting rid of the impurities and keeping the essence, and constantly refining. Chang Le Dao Master somewhat understood, but this is because he has already stood at the peak of the middle Yuanying stage, and is only one step away from achieving the heaven and earth form. Lin Feng quietly looked at this scene, carrying a smile on his face. This kind of experience, for Xiaoyi himself, is also very difficult to replicate. In the future when he attacks the bottlenecks of other realms, it will also be very difficult to reproduce this scene today. However, if he is not confident, why would Xiaoyi be so reckless? He should have already calculated that this time he could use the battle with Xiao Qingqing to break through the bottleneck in one fell swoop and reach the late Yuanying stage. Tide Observing Sword Master and the others also understood the reason, but their faces were still solemn. In any case, what Zhu Yi did today left a deep impression in their hearts, even though they had already reached the Essence Soul realm. Finally, just as Xiao Qingqing completely got rid of the influence of the Golden Bridge and was about to activate all the mana in her body to break the 4 symbols Great Circle Formation and the Chapter of Saints, Zhu Yi's heaven and earth form was also completely condensed. He himself, in the Yuanying stage, became 11 or 12 years old, which was a sign that he had reached the late Yuanying stage. The size of the cloud forest branch had shrunk a lot, but it was still full of spiritual qi, which poured into Zhu Yi's body to help him recover his mana, nourish his Yuanying stage, and completely stabilize his heaven and earth form. To be honest, there was indeed a small gap between us before. Zhu Yi finally looked down at Xiao Qingqing and smiled, but now, it is no longer a small gap. As he said this, Zhu Yi's huge heaven and earth form stomped on the Golden Bridge, and it suddenly burst into amazing splendor. He had reached the late Yuanying stage, and the power of the Supreme Saint Ancient Robe was further enhanced. The Chapter of Saints became more powerful, and as the golden light flashed, the sound of the book shook the sky, and directly began to counterattack Xiao Qingqing's star disaster. You created the great destruction, the great calamity, and I will calm the suffering and eliminate the calamity. No matter how much suffering and calamity there is, it will not be able to stop me from leading the people to surpass the sea of suffering and reach the shore, achieving freedom together. Zhu Yi lightly shouted, Xiao Qingqing, you and my mother didn't get along well. My mother's death is also related to you. I won't kill you, but I'll take you to my mother's grave and sweep it for her. I have the right to punish you. Xiao Qingqing's gaze was unprecedentedly cold. If she really ended up like that, it would be a greater humiliation than death to her. She said coldly, you want me to sweep that lowly Meng Bingyun's grave? I didn't dig up her grave back then because of Hangguo. Zhu Yi snorted coldly, go and watch over my mother's grave. His heaven and earth form let out a deafening roar, and the heavenly cycle formed by the 4 symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation also underwent a tremendous change. It expanded to the size of the heavenly cycle, and shrunk to the size of a speck of dust. The twisting and immense pressure caused Xiao Qingqing's Yuanshan incarnation to feel pain. It was as if her Yuanshan was going to turn into dust along with the circle. Zhu Yi's four symbols' great heavenly cycle formation was both offensive and defensive. Just now, in order to protect himself from the heavenly law's embodiment technique, he had chosen to focus on defense and gave up on attacking. Now, he could finally display his fierce offensive side. Late-stage Yuanying, heaven and earth form. Feeling Zhu Yi's sudden increase in supernatural power, Xiao Qingqing's expression turned solemn. He actually broke through to the next realm and cultivated the heaven and earth form while fighting with me? A feeling of absurdity surfaced in Xiao Qingqing's heart, followed by incomparable humiliation. A mid-stage Yuanying cultivator broke through to the next realm and cultivated the heaven and earth form while fighting with a primordial soul cultivator. Xiao Qingqing did not stop midway. Silently, she waited for Zhu Yi to achieve the heaven and earth form, but under such circumstances, Zhu Yi actually succeeded. The towering anger and humiliation made Xiao Qingqing feel as if her Yuanshan was about to explode. However, facing Zhu Yi's overwhelming counterattack, Xiao Qingqing's anger instantly cooled down, and she regained her rationality. She took a deep look at Zhu Yi. With a single thought, her primordial spirit avatar trembled. She gave up on the star calamity divine art and stopped activating it. If she could break through the heavens and receive the power of the stars, she would continue to fight with Zhu Yi. However, she could not break through the suppression of Zhu Yi's four symbols' great heavenly cycle formation and the Saints chapter. Clearly, Zhu Yi would not be foolish enough to destroy himself and choose a more difficult method of victory. Pursuing a cornered enemy was Zhu Yi's battle philosophy. The more his opponent wanted to do something, the more he would not let them get what they wanted. The world formed by Xiao Qingqing's Yuanshan began to revolve rapidly. Many spaces connected and turned into a new world, protecting Xiao Qingqing's Yuanshan avatar within. It was the Heavenly Gate's secret protective Dharma art, the Universal World Curse. This Dharma art was cast by Xiao Qingqing, who was in the primordial soul realm. She focused on defending with all her might, and the effect was much stronger than when Yin Sangchen used it previously. Unfortunately, it's useless. As Zhu Yi spoke indifferently, the majestic golden bridge descended once again. Chapter 752. The golden bridge formed by the Saints chapter directly pierced through Xiao Qingqing's small world incantation, connecting it with the outside world. The great heavenly cycle rotated again, completely disintegrating the small world. Xiao Qingqing immediately felt that the small world she had created with her magic power and spiritual qi was actually approaching its end under Zhu Yi's control. It was beginning to simulate the destruction of the world. She, who was in this world, had to bear the terrifying power of the destruction. Xiao Qingqing's Yuanshan incarnation revealed some emotional fluctuations. It was angry, but also cautious. Boundless longevity, chaotic heaven's protection. Xiao Qingqing let out a drawn-out cry. Streaks of purplish-golden radiance flickered, as if she was wearing a jade robe that protected her soul. She forcefully withstood the terrifying destructive force of the destruction of a small world. Longevity, chaotic heaven's protection incantation. The eyes of Lin Feng, who was watching the battle, and Zhu Yi, who was in the middle of the battle, flashed at the same time. The protective secret incantation passed down by the Grand Imperial Orthodoxy. After the great heavenly world incantation, Xiao Qingqing, who was fully focused on defense, activated another top-notch defensive Dharma art, the longevity chaotic heavens protection incantation. The two great Dharma arts alternated, finally withstanding Zhu Yi's round of attacks. At the same time, she activated the Yang Sky Lantern with all her strength, forcefully breaking through the eternal night devil steel's encirclement and returning to her side. Reality proved that Xiao Qingqing's decision was very correct. She had just called back the Yang Sky Lantern when Zhu Yi's second round of attacks came, not giving her a chance to catch her breath. The heavenly cycle formed by the four symbols' great heavenly cycle formation directly wrapped around the purple-gold immortal robe formed by her longevity chaotic heaven protective curse. Then, with a sudden contraction, the immortal robe that seemed to have a lifespan as long as the heavens and was indestructible exploded with a loud bang, turning into specks of flowing light that dissipated. Rise! As Xiao Qingqing shouted anxiously, the scarlet flames on the yang sky lantern flickered with a golden light and scattered with a loud rumble. The embers connected in the air and turned into a fire net that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It formed the third layer of defense, protecting her within it. She was a primordial divinity cultivator, so she could push the yang sky lantern's power to the limit. Under her control, the lantern was equivalent to a primordial divinity incarnation realm expert. The ferocious heavenly fire of the heavenly sun transformed the space within a radius of nearly 1,000 miles into a sea of fire that burned fiercely. As the scorching airflow fluctuated, even time and space seemed to distort. If it was one of the 7 great true fires, I would still find it a bit troublesome. But although your heavenly fire is strong, it is not enough. Zhu Yi said bluntly, completely ignoring the ferocious fire net. His holy robe flickered with a dazzling white light, defending against the attack of the heavenly fire. His 4 symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation and the Book of the Saints did not stop and continued to attack Xiao Qingqing. If she had the Yang Sky Lantern to help her fend off Zhu Yi, Xiao Qingqing would have had the time to regroup. However, Zhu Yi didn't give her any chance at all. Relying on the power of the Holy Ancient Robe, he took on the Yang Sky Lantern head-on while attacking non-stop. The Supreme Saint Ancient Robe defied the common sense of most magical treasures. Under Zhu Yi's control, it was as if a nascent divinity incarnation realm master was controlling it, making it hard for the heavenly fire of the Yang Sky Lantern to advance any further. Xiao Qingqing, on the other hand, was in dire straits when faced with Zhu Yi's storm-like attacks. Suddenly, her vision turned black. Endless darkness enveloped her and swallowed her primordial spirit incarnation. It was as if she had sunk into a silent world without light or sound. Not good. Xiao Qingqing immediately knew that she was facing the suction force of the eternal night devil steel. If he didn't break out, he would be suppressed by the eternal night devil steel and Zhu Yi. At that time, he would really be captured alive. Vile spawn, don't even think about it. As Xiao Qingqing shouted, the world formed by her primordial spirit instantly started to revolve. It was as if there were countless small worlds revolving at the same time. In the center of these small worlds, a powerful intent realm faintly broke through the Yingxi realm and connected with the entire heaven primal world. In the next moment, this powerful intent realm transformed into layers of radiance and exploded outwards. It forcefully broke through the eternal night devil steel's imprisonment. A muffled groan came from the eternal night devil steel. The boundless curtain of night retreated, and Xiao Qingqing finally saw the light of day again. Even though she had only been enveloped by the darkness for a short moment, she felt as if she had lived through millions of years. Xiao Qingqing's attack had damaged the eternal night devil steel. Even though the eternal night devil steel was unable to effectively unleash its power, it was still a transformation-grade magical treasure. Thus, it was still injured by Xiao Qingqing's attack. However, Xiao Qingqing wasn't in a good state either. In fact, it was difficult for her to maintain her primordial spirit incarnation and return to her human form. Silently, Zhu Yi said, "There are some principles and intents of the Universal Tao's supreme divine ability, the Universal Treasure Wheel. Even though it's just the tip of the iceberg, it is indeed extraordinary. However, it still won't change your defeat." Zhu Yi's 4 symbols Great Heavenly Cycle Formation and the Saint Chapter's divine ability struck down once again. Facing this scene, Xiao Qingqing's expression was incomparably ugly. At this moment, her primordial spirit was injured, and it was even more strenuous for her to defend against Zhu Yi's attacks. Xiao Qingqing had already completely given up on the idea of turning defeat into victory. It was impossible for her to fight to the end and drag Zhu Yi down with her. Lin Feng was watching from the side. At this stage, Xiao Qingqing had no choice but to admit a fact that was hard for her to accept. She, a dignified primordial spirit cultivator, was actually going to lose to a Yuanian cultivator. Xiao Qingqing took a deep breath and instantly calmed her heart. She was also a decisive person. She directly pointed a finger at the center of her brows. A complicated golden pattern instantly appeared at the center of her brows, and it looked like a golden plate. The golden light receded, revealing an iron coupon with vermilion words written on it. Upon closer inspection, it was only half of the coupon. Xiao Qingqing shattered it with a finger. Instantly, rays of purplish gold light flashed and swept her up. She broke through the void and escaped at an extreme speed. Even Zhu Yi's 4 symbols' great heavenly cycle formation and the saint chapter couldn't stop her in time. The Grand Emperor's death substitution golden plate. Zhu Yi's eyes flashed, and a piece of information appeared in his mind. In ancient times, the Grand Emperor had once made an iron alchemy coupon and bestowed it to his meritorious subjects. It was a proof of immunity from death, and at the same time, it was also a protective treasure. An iron alchemy coupon was divided into 2 halves, with the emperor and the subject each holding 1 half. Once the subject suffered a fatal attack, the iron alchemy coupon would automatically activate the Grand Emperor's mana to help defend against it. At the same time, it would break through the void and bring the subject away from danger, returning to the emperor who held the other half of the iron alchemy coupon. Thus, the later generations also called the death substitution golden plate. Although it was a one-time use item, the person who held the death substitution golden plate was equivalent to having an extra life. The death substitution golden plate was very powerful, but it was also very rare. Now, it was extinct in the Divine Land. However, the Great Zhou Empire, which had excavated the Grand Emperor's palace and the Grand Emperor's ruins, obtained a small amount of it. It wasn't unexpected that they would give it to Xiao Qingcheng, one of the core members of the Eastern Heavenly Gate. Zhu Yi, you're very good. Xiao Qingcheng was swept up by the purplish gold light, and her expression had already calmed down. You're almost at the stage where Hangwu will personally take action, even though this is a great nightmare for you. Zhu Yi smiled. Very soon. Even if he doesn't come to find me, I will go find him. When that day comes, the Eastern Heavenly Gate won't be able to protect you, the Great Zhou Empire won't be able to protect you, and even Lord Father won't be able to protect you. As for today, do you think that everything will be fine and you can leave easily with the death substitution golden plate? Your primordial spirit is injured, and my eternal night devil steel is also slightly damaged. Leave this treasured lamp of yours as compensation. As Zhu Yi spoke, the Dharma idol behind him shook. The giant that was originally sitting cross-legged on the qilin stood up, and its 4 faces chanted together. Its 8 arms also let go of the books, paper, brush, ruler, and zither, and they performed an ancient greeting. A vast and majestic power spread out, and the power of the holy ancient robe also supported Zhu Yi's Dharma idol. The heavenly cycle formed by the 4 great heavenly cycle formations shook the void, and it forcibly stopped Xiao Qingcheng, who was about to fly away, for a moment. In the next moment, the golden bridge formed by the Book of Saints condensed into a ray of golden light, and it swept down with a loud bang, causing the yang sky lantern above Xiao Qingcheng's head to fall. Zhu Yi laughed. Go, go. Amidst the laughter, Xiao Qingcheng was directly hit by the golden bridge, and she tumbled down. Only then did the purple light of the death substitution golden plate break free from the heavenly cycle formation, and it swept her up and flew away. This scene was not only seen by Sword Venerable Tai Ting, Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, Dao Venerable Changluo, and Devouring Sun Great Sage, but also by Xiao Huayang and the others in the distance. Not only the Eastern Heavenly Gate cultivators, but the people from the other forces were also dumbfounded and felt that it was unbelievable. Zhu Yi. Xiao Qingcheng was so embarrassed that her face turned red and her eyes were almost bloodshot after being beaten up by Zhu Yi in front of everyone. Her originally calm state of mind was shattered again. Xiao Qingcheng only felt that if she had not completely refined her body into a primordial spirit, and if she was still a flesh and blood body, she was afraid that she would have vomited blood on the spot. Senior Sister Xiao. The death immunity golden plate could only be used on one person. After saving Xiao Qingcheng and leaving, it could not take care of Yin Sangchen anymore. Xiao Qingcheng could not even protect her yang sky lantern, so she naturally could not bring Yin Sangchen away. Yin Sangchen was already seriously injured previously. Although he did not face Zhu Yi's powerful attacks directly under Shao Qingqing's protection, he was unable to escape at this moment. He could only watch as Zhu Yi used the light and darkness mandala world boundary again and captured him alive. Since you like to talk so much, don't become mute later. Zhu Yi laughed coldly and completely suppressed Yin Sangchen. Seeing this scene, all the spectators fell into silence. But even so, the outcome of this battle was beyond everyone's expectations. They originally thought that it was already praiseworthy that Zhu Yi was able to fight against Shao Qingqing, who was at the primordial spirit stage, at the Yuanying stage, and did not die or lose. Unexpectedly, it was actually Zhu Yi who defeated Shao Qingqing in the end. Tide Hark Sword Venerable and the other big shots' complicated gazes shifted between Lin Feng and Zhu Yi. Even with their state of mind, they felt shocked and shaken at this moment because they felt that they were completely inferior to Lin Feng at this moment. Not only was there a gap in strength, but even their seniority was lower. As Lin Feng's disciple, Zhu Yi might be young, but he could actually fight against primordial spirit stage cultivators like them as equals. This caused the gap between Lin Feng and them to become even more obvious. Compared to the shock and complicated emotions of the others, Lin Feng's expression was as calm as usual, as if he already knew the outcome of the battle and that Zhu Yi's victory was a matter of course. He smiled faintly. This battle is over. My disciple and I will take our leave now. Dao Master Changle and Tide Hark Sword Venerable came to their senses at the same time. Thinking of the verdant jade set that fell into Lin Feng's hands, they were unwilling and in a dilemma. Chapter 753. His Majesty is still not here. Dao Master Changle felt bitter in his heart, but he was unwilling to leave when he thought of the Qingli jade set that had fallen into Lin Feng's hands. Sword Venerable Tinghai also thought the same. He hurriedly tried to contact Emperor Liang Pan and his sect master, Sword Venerable Tsunghai, but he received a shocking news. On the way, Liang Pan and the other experts of the Great Zhou dynasty passed by a sea area and suddenly found other clues, which attracted the attention of all parties. Liang Pan made a prompt decision to rush over. Dao Master Changle also got the same answer after contacting Emperor Qin Stonefeather. The two immediately knew that whether it was Emperor Qin Stonefeather or Emperor Zhou Liang Pan, it would be impossible for them to rush over in a short time. Dao Master Chang Lu thought quickly. He let out a long sigh and bowed to Lin Feng. Sect Master Lin, I'm afraid that His Majesty will miss you. Let me express my regret. Lin Feng smiled. Including the Fangzhang Immortal Mountain that has already fallen into the hands of the Great Zhou, there are a total of 3 immortal mountains. I am also very troubled as to how to plan and reap the greatest rewards. I believe fellow Daoist sure has discovered something else. Then I won't wait any longer. After saying that, Lin Feng took Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Jiayu, White Light, and the others and flew away together. Dao Master Changle and Sword Venerable Tinghai sighed at the same time and followed behind Lin Feng with the people of the Great Qin dynasty and Songhai Sword sect. Without backup, they gave up on the idea of robbing, but they still followed from a distance. Although it seemed a little stingy, it was better than giving up for nothing. Even though it has not been confirmed, but there is a very high chance that the Liqing Jade set is an important clue to finding the Yingzhou Celestial Mountain. Out of this consideration, even though he cannot directly borrow the help of the Liqing Jade set by following Lin Feng and the others, he may still be able to find some clues. If Lin Feng himself came and directly drove them away, it would not be too late for them to disperse. Anyway, they would not forcibly contradict Lin Feng. If the Liqing Jade was truly of great importance, then they could at least inform Stonefeather, Liang Pan, and the others immediately. Not only Dao Master Chang Lu and Tide Listening Sword Master, but also the Red Thunder Dragon King and the Devouring Sun Great Saint, the 2 demon clan powerhouses, also gathered their subordinates and quietly followed. Only Xiao Huayang and the others from the East Heaven Gate could only watch the scene unfold. They wanted to give chase, but they could not keep up with the flying speed of an Essence Soul expert. After Shao Qingqing left in defeat, Lin Feng and Zhu Yi couldn't be bothered to make things difficult for them. Thinking that Zhu Yi didn't take him seriously, Xiao Huayang couldn't help but feel depressed. In addition to being depressed, Xiao Huayang's heart was also in turmoil. Until now, he still couldn't believe it. Even my mother is not a match for Zhu Yi. But, how is this possible? My mother has reached the essence soul realm, but she was defeated by Zhu Yi, who is only at the late stage of yuanying. She was even forced to use the death substitution golden token. I can't believe my eyes. Doesn't that mean that even if Zhu Yi stops advancing, and I have reached the essence soul realm, I am still not a match for him? That little bastard was raised like a pig and a dog in the Lord Protector's mansion. He was not allowed to practice martial arts, was not allowed to learn Taoism, but now, Xiao Huayang stood there in a daze. Suddenly, she saw stars and felt dizzy. No matter if it was her soul or the nascent soul that looked like a 4 or 5-year-old child, at this moment, they were like fragile porcelain that had suddenly suffered a collision, causing numerous cracks to appear on their surface, and they were on the verge of collapse. It seemed as if they would completely shatter at any moment. Father can still beat him. In front of grandfather, he is just a little bug that can be crushed at any time. There is still the great elder, and there are also experts in the great Zhou dynasty. And mother. That's right, there's also mother. This time, mother was caught unprepared by him. I didn't expect his supernatural powers to be so strong. That's why I lost the initiative a few times. The next time mother is prepared, the situation today will not be the same. Xiao Huayang shook her head in a daze. It took her a lot of effort to regain her composure, but there was blood flowing out of her orifices. But no matter what, I can't see any hope of beating him. Unless his cultivation remains stagnant at the late stage of yuanying, and I can reach the essence soul realm and return to the emptiness realm. But, how is that possible? Looking at the dazed Xiao Huayang, the other East Heaven Gate cultivators secretly shook their heads and looked away. At this time, whether it was a mocking, or comforting gaze, it could cause this young genius of the East Heaven Gate to completely lose control. It was hard to predict what would happen if that happened. However, thinking that their essence soul realm expert, Xiao Qingcheng, had lost to the late stage of yuanying, Zhu Yi, they were also shocked and in disbelief. The East Heaven Gate cultivators felt as if a corner of the world in front of them had collapsed. The battle just now had completely overturned their common sense and understanding of the Tao world. Apart from the East Heaven Gate cultivators who were standing in the desolate wind, even the cultivators who flew with sword Venerable Tide Hark and Tao Master Chang Le had not calmed down yet. Today's battle was destined to take them a long time to digest. It was destined to shock the entire divine land, and even infinite region would be affected. Whether it was a coincidence or a combination of many factors, how many years had it been since a yuanying cultivator had defeated an essence soul realm expert in the great Tianyuan world? As long as they thought of this, the spectators felt their hearts tremble and could not calm down. After these years of journeying, the entire heaven primal world, not only the human cultivation world of the divine continent, even a portion of the demon race in the vast heaven wasteland continent that are not cut off from information, towards the monstrous and nature-defying talents of Lin Feng's direct disciples, especially towards the strength of Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, Wang Lin, and Shi Tianhao. They all hold an attitude of approval, publicly acknowledging that each and every one of them can be called the proud sons of heaven. Yet, these geniuses coexisted in the same era and gathered under Lin Feng's tutelage. It could be said to be a rare anomaly throughout history. Originally, East Heaven Gate no longer hid its tracks, and the reappearance of the Heaven Gate legacy would be a major event that would attract the attention of the entire great Tianyuan world. However, no one would have thought that the final achievement would be the fame of Lin Feng and his disciple, as well as Xianmen Tianzong. It was really a good stepping stone. To be fair, Xiao Qingcheng was not weak. With the Yang Sky Lantern in hand, her actual combat strength could be said to be outstanding among first-tier Essence Soul Realm cultivators. No matter where they stood, Sword Venerable Tide Hark, Tao Master Chang'e, Crimson Thunder Dragon King, and Devouring Sun Great Sage had to admit that they might not be Xiao Qingcheng's match. However, such a powerful essence soul realm cultivator had been defeated by a late-stage Yuanying cultivator, Zhu Yi. This made their hearts heavy. On the contrary, Zhu Yi did not care much about it. It was rare for the heavenly law's embodiment technique to suppress the essence soul. Most of them were coincidences that could not be replicated, and it had not been seen in recent years. That was why essence soul realm experts like Sword Venerable Tideheart could not help but sigh. The group of cultivators below the essence soul realm were even more shocked. However, Zhu Yi only felt that he had vented his anger and felt comfortable. He did not feel proud at all. This was because his master, Lin Feng, had just performed it once a few days ago. Li Yuanfang, Jiayu, and White Light all expressed admiration and congratulated Zhu Yi, but they were not as shocked as the others. "Master, those people have been following behind us." Li Yuanfang looked back, and Lin Feng smiled. "Let them follow us. Don't worry about it. The Greenly Jade set is only a clue to Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. It doesn't mean that Yingzhou Immortal Mountain will be in our hands after we obtain the Greenly Jade set. If it was so easy to obtain Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, Dao Venerable Jin Luan would not have left the Greenly Jade set on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain." Lin Feng smiled. "On the other hand, we can take a look at Xiaoyi's spoils of war. They are quite bountiful." As he spoke, he took out the Blood River painting. The painting unfolded, and a black robe appeared from within, trying to break free from the Blood River true water. Zhu Yi said, "The defense of this robe is quite good. When I was in the middle stage of Yuanying, without the help of the holy ancient robe, the golden bridge formed by the saints chapter might not be able to break through its defense. Also, I can feel that this robe is not just a treasure for protection. It has other uses." Lin Feng smiled and said, "That's natural. This treasure is called the Serene Sky Robe, speaking of which, it's quite famous." Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang came to a realization. This is one of the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates, the Serene Sky Robe. According to the legends, when the Elysium was at its peak, there were other powerful magic treasures besides the Great Wheel of Heavenly Fortune, which was a magic treasure of creation. Among them, the top 9 magic treasures were known as the 9 treasures of the Elysium, also known as the 9 heavenly treasures. Central Heavenly Jade, a Mahayana level treasure. Eastern Sungtian Dao Jian, a Mahayana level treasure. Northeastern Sky Min Flag, a transformation level treasure. Northern Black Sky Seal, a Mahayana level treasure. Northwestern Serene Sky Robe, a transformation level treasure. Western Heavenly Jade Needle, a Mahayana level treasure. Southwestern Vermilion Pagoda, a transformation level treasure. Southern Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron, a Mahayana level treasure. Southeastern Yang Sky Lantern, a transformation level treasure. However, with the destruction of the heavenly gates and the fall of many experts, a large number of treasures in the heavenly gates were also destroyed. They were annihilated along with the heavenly gates in the river of time and were gradually forgotten by people. Lin Feng smiled and said, "The heavenly jade in the hands of Taishu Temple's Yan Mingyue was the top of the 9 treasures of the heavenly gates, a peak Mahayana level treasure. In the absence of the 9 heavens sword, it was known as the number 1 treasure below the great heavenly wheel. However, it was heavily damaged during the war that overthrew and deposed the ruthless emperor. I heard that it fell to the transformation level. In the end, no one knows how it ended up in the hands of Taishu Temple." He gently flicked the black robe with his finger. "If I remember correctly, the northwestern Serene Sky Robe was completely destroyed back then. The treasure itself was annihilated along with its original spirit. Therefore, this Serene Sky Robe should be a replica made by an essence soul cultivator in the Eastern Heavenly Gate according to the ancient method. In fact, it can't be called the real Serene Sky Robe, but it's still a good treasure." A muffled groan came from the Serene Sky Robe. It was the voice that had conversed with Yin Sungchen back then. Listening carefully now, it was the voice of a young child. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi and laughed softly. On the other hand, Xiaoyi lost Xiao Qingqing's southeastern Yang sky lantern, which was one of the real 9 treasures of the heavenly gates back then. However, it was also damaged back then and fell from the transformation level to the spirit nurturing level. Both the serene sky robe and the Yang sky lantern are your spoils of war, Xiaoyi. Zhu Yi smiled and asked, Master, can the Li Qing jade set help us find Yingzhou Immortal Mountain? Lin Feng pointed at the Blood River painting and the Li Qing jade set immediately flew out. Chapter 754. The Qing Li jade set flew out of the Blood River painting. Facing Lin Feng, who had a faint smile on his face, the Qing Li jade set vibrated slightly, and a clear middle-aged man's voice came from it. Your master and disciple have great cultivation. It's rare to see someone in the late Yuanying stage able to defeat an essence soul adept in magic power. Lin Feng said lightly, I'm Lin Feng, the master of Xian Men. I'm here for the 3 mountains of Yinghai. My name is Qing Like, and I'm the original spirit of this Qing Li jade set. A voice came from the Qing Li jade set. You're looking for Yingzhou Deity Mountain, and I'm willing to help you. I only hope that if you can control the Deity Mountain, you can make me stay there. Slowly, Qing Like said, to be honest, there's an immortal spring on Yingzhou Deity Mountain, and the spring water tastes like fine wine. I've been nourishing myself in the spring water for 1,000 years, and I'm only 1 step away from advancing to the transformation realm. Regrettably, I left the mountain, and I hope that you can help me. Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Jiayu, White Light, and the others looked at each other, and they could see the brilliance in each other's eyes. Oh! There's such an immortal spring on Yingzhou Deity Mountain. Without its master's nourishment, a spirit-nurturing realm artifact could cultivate on its own, but the speed was extremely slow. If one wanted to advance to the transformation realm on their own, it would take a very long time without a great opportunity. Not to mention 1,000 years, there might not even be a hope in 10,000 years. Lin Feng asked, how can you help me find Yingzhou Deity Mountain? Qing Like answered, I've been nourished in the immortal spring on the mountain for 1,000 years. Although I've left the mountain for a long time, I can still use a method to return to the origin and guide the way. Although I can't say that I can definitely determine the exact location, I can still give you a general direction. After a short pause, he said, my original master, Dao Master Jin Wan, cultivated the Golden Peak returning to origin technique, which proves the immortality of metal and the return of all things to their origin. He used this technique to cultivate me, and I followed him to cultivate this technique. The magical power of the Li Qing Jade Table was able to return all things to their origin. When the magical power spread out, depending on the strength of the opponent's attack, it would erase them to different degrees, turning them into primordial spiritual energy. This treasure could also partially restore damage caused by other forces. Whether it could be successfully restored and how much it could be restored depended on the specific situation. However, it could not be used on living things. At the same time, any person or object that this treasure came into contact with would more or less leave behind traces. During the Middle Ages, Dao Venerable Jin Wan had his own dermic powers and the special effects of the green Li Jade. Although he was only a first-tier primordial soul realm cultivator, he was very popular in the Divine Land. There were often people who came to him for help. They would either ask him to help them repair items, or ask him to help them find people or things. Dao Master Jin Wan intended to enter the Yingxi to search for the 3 mountains precisely because of his confidence in his Taoist skills and divine sense. Unfortunately, he still died in the Yingxi, and the Dao orthodoxy he passed down, Golden Mountain Temple, finally declined. At that time, many forces in the Divine Land wanted to obtain Dao Master Jin Wan's Golden Summit return to origin technique. However, in the end, they fought for it, causing the technique to be completely destroyed and lost, never to exist again. Qing Like said, Your Excellency's clone has such powerful strength, so I believe that your original body is even more extraordinary. I'm willing to refine it for you. I only hope that you can help me advance to the transformation realm. Lin Feng said lightly, if you're sincerely willing to become my disciple, I'll naturally accept you. Qing Like immediately answered, of course I'm sincere. tell me about the situation of Yingzhou Fairy Mountain first. Lin Feng said, I have plenty of time, so you can speak in as much detail as possible. Don't leave out anything. Also, tell me clearly about the death of Dao Venerable Jin Wan. Yingzhou Fairy Mountain has a circumference of 2,000 miles. There are divine Ganoderma and immortal grass growing on it. At the foot of the mountain, there is a fairy spring that tastes like wine and tastes sweet. It's the jade spring that I used to live in. The entire fairy mountain is filled with huge and complicated formations. The formations don't seem to be man-made, but an ancient formation that was naturally formed by the great Tao of heaven and earth activating the fairy mountain's spiritual qi. It's extremely complicated, and it's very similar to the Yingxi's illusion. It's extremely strange. Qing spoke tirelessly. Lin Feng and the others listened very carefully, especially when it came to the ancient formation that was created by the great Tao of heaven and earth and was born along with the fairy mountain. They were especially clear about it. After all, according to Qing, Tao Venerable Jin Wan had died in this ancient formation. Later on, Qing Liu himself was also trapped in the formation and was trapped for tens of thousands of years. It was only when the fairy mountain appeared several times and was attacked by other cultivators that the formation became weaker and weaker. Only then did Qing Liu seize the opportunity to escape and shift his position. As a result, he plunged into the jade spring and was nourished by the spring water. However, after 1,000 years, something happened to the fairy mountain again. Qing Liu left the spring water and fell from the fairy mountain. This fall made Qing Liu miserable. Not only did he leave Yingzhou Fairy Mountain, but he was also injured. He could only helplessly lay dormant for thousands of years. It was only recently that he gradually recovered and reappeared. Qing could not forget the jade spring on Yingzhou Fairy Mountain and wanted to return. However, he was trapped by an illusion on a small island in the northeast of the Yingxi. Not only was he unable to move freely, but his whereabouts were also exposed, causing Shao Qingcheng, the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, Dao Venerable Changlu, and the others to come looking for him. Lin Feng nodded and suddenly smiled. He looked at Li Yuanfang and asked, Yuanfang, what do you think? Master, it's not Yuanfang. It's Yuanfang. Li Yuanfang answered almost naturally. According to Senior Qing description, the Yingzhou Fairy Mountain has been continuously explored and attacked by generations of experts. The ancient formation on it has become weaker and weaker. Senior Qing has left Yingzhou Fairy Mountain for thousands of years, so the specific situation is still uncertain. Li Yuanfang chose his words carefully. He would not easily speak in a speculative tone. It was very difficult to hear words like afraid, possibly, and perhaps from his words. But there's one thing we can be sure of. Li Yuanfang suddenly changed the topic. If the ancient formation on the island is indeed not man-made, but was born together with Yingzhou Fairy Mountain, then the changes in the ancient formation will definitely cause changes to Yingzhou Fairy Mountain itself. He paused for a moment before slowly saying, the formation is getting weaker and weaker, which corresponds to the power of the fairy mountain itself. It should be going to the other extreme, which is becoming stronger and stronger. Zhu Yi also nodded and said, I agree with sixth junior brother's words. However, this kind of strengthening might not only be reflected in the concept of power of the fairy mountain. It's possible that the spirit herbs on the fairy mountain are becoming more and more luxuriant. It's also possible that the effect of Senior Qing's Jade Spring is getting better and better. The Jade Spring's great effect in nourishing the magic treasure's primordial spirit is probably related to the changes on the fairy mountain. Li Yuanfang also nodded in agreement. Lin Feng smiled faintly. It's also possible that new changes will be born. It's not impossible for the fairy mountain to develop intelligence. Zhu Yi and the others looked pensive when they heard that. Even Qing's jade set was slightly silent, and the fluctuations of his consciousness indicated that he was thinking. When we get to the island and face the ancient formation, we might need to borrow your experience, Lin Feng said to Qing. Qing immediately agreed and let Lin Feng refine it. Then, Lin Feng activated Qing Like's jade set, which shone with a bright golden light. The golden light gradually condensed into an illusion of light and shadow in the void. In the illusion of light and shadow, a huge fairy mountain with a circumference of thousands of miles loomed. Although it was not as large as Fangzhang Fairy Mountain, the huge pressure it exuded was not inferior at all. The illusion of golden light suddenly shattered and turned into specks of light. However, these specks of light did not dissipate. Instead, they faintly turned into a golden line in the sky, as if passing through the endless void with no end in sight. When Lin Feng and the others saw this, they secretly nodded. Qing Like's jade set was indeed an important key to finding Yingzhou Fairy Mountain. Dao Master Chang'e and the others who were quietly following behind Lin Feng also became excited and secretly encouraged themselves. However, they quickly came to their senses and could not help but look slightly bitter. Sure enough, Lin Feng stopped in front and turned to look at them with a faint smile on his face. Dao Master Chang'e, Tide Listening Sword Master, Red Thunder Dragon King, and Sun Devouring Saint also stopped with their respective subordinates and looked at Lin Feng with a bitter smile. Finding Fairy Mountain doesn't mean that you can really control it. Having more clues and more choices is always good. Lin Feng said lightly, I can allow you to accompany me, but you need to exchange clues and information of equal value. Dao Master Chang'e and the others looked at each other and thought at the same time, the Master of Xian Men has a big appetite. Not to mention the gathering of heroes in Yinghai, no one dared to say that they could come out on top. Even if the Fairy Mountain was placed in front of them, it was still unknown whether they could break the restriction of the Fairy Mountain with their own strength. At this time, obtaining reliable information about a Fairy Mountain and attacking it with all their strength would obviously have the greatest hope. If they were greedy, in the end, they might end up with nothing and the loss would outweigh the gain. Although it was said that one would be able to completely control the Yingxi by controlling the three mountains, everyone was eyeing them covetously and showing their abilities. It was extremely difficult to monopolize the three mountains. Apart from the Great Zhou Empire, which had already obtained the Fangzhang Immortal Mountain, the others had very little hope. Even the Great Zhou dynasty had become the target of public criticism. It was also difficult and they might have to lower their expectations. However, looking at the indifferent Lin Feng, Dao Master Chang'e and the others did not have the courage to question him. After everyone thought for a moment, Tide Listening Sword Master made a prompt decision and said, in the southern area of Yinghai, someone saw traces of Mount Penglai. His Majesty Emperor Zhou, Emperor Qin Shiyu, and our sect master all rushed there after receiving the news. On the other side, Dao Master Chang'e was a little slower and submitted the same information. After Lin Feng smiled and shook his head, Dao Master Chang'e suddenly had the urge to kick Tide Listening Sword Master to death. In the southern area of Yinghai, Fangzhang Fairy Mountain, which has fallen into the hands of the Great Zhou dynasty, has also appeared. Dao Master Chang'e took a deep breath and said to Lin Feng using his spiritual power. Oh. Lin Feng's eyes flashed slightly and thoughts turned in his mind. For a moment, he thought of many things. At this time, the Red Thunder Dragon King said, although I have not found any clues about the three fairy mountains, I know a thing or two about breaking the restriction of Mount Penglai. I wonder if the master of the celestial sect is interested. Lin Feng looked at him, oh. Tell me. The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King said slowly, as everyone knows, there is an independent sea surrounding the Penglai Immortal Mountain. The waves are hundreds of meters wide, and they protect the Penglai Immortal Mountain. They move along with the Immortal Mountain and are the greatest obstacle to obtaining the Immortal Mountain. This king knows of a way to break through this sea. Chapter 755. After many years of exploration by generations of experts, the mysterious veil that shrouded the three mountains of Ying Ocean had gradually faded. They were just waiting for the fated person to find them and think of a way to officially control them. Mount Penglai, one of the three mountains, had an independent sea area outside the mountain. The sea water was dark, and it was called the Deep Sea. There was no wind, but the waves were 1,000 feet high. It moved with Mount Penglai and protected it. This dark sea was different from the netherworld sea of the seven seas of heaven essence. It was called the Dark Sea. The Dark Sea was high and deep in the sky. The so-called Dark Sea was actually a spatial ocean similar to the void battlefield. It was vast and distant. Under the protection of the Dark Sea, people who wanted to approach Mount Penglai could only lament their inadequacy and feel that it was so close yet so far away. If Essence Soul cultivators wanted to forcibly cross the Dark Sea, they would be strangely suppressed by the entire alternate space of Ing Ocean. Even third-tier Essence Soul integration realm experts would find it difficult to break through. Apart from Mount Penglai, it was the same for Yingzhou Mountain and Fangzhang Mountain. Ing Ocean's three mountains each had mystical restrictions protecting them. However, just like how Fangzhang Mountain had fallen into the hands of the Great Zhou dynasty, the ancient array formation on Yingzhou Mountain had also gradually weakened. Someone had also found a way to crack Mount Penglai's protective restriction. Lin Feng couldn't help but sigh. The power of the masses was great. Ocean Kingdom was like a high-difficulty game with layers upon layers of checkpoints, causing countless hardcore players to vomit blood and return in low spirits. However, there were even more players pouring in, using their own intelligence and ability to challenge this difficult problem that nature had designed. Generation after generation of powerhouses advanced one after another and finally solved the hell difficulty checkpoints. With the help of the experience of the predecessors, Ing Hai, a highly difficult game, was about to welcome the day when the game was finally cleared and the game would explode. In all fairness, even if the three mountains failed to be conquered and controlled by someone this time, the next time, and the next time after that, would probably be about the same. However, it was hard to say who would be the one laughing in the end. Lin Feng looked at the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King and said, "If your method is feasible, I'll allow you to come along." After all, they had to find the Penglai deity mountain first before they could talk about breaking through the outer Black Sea. The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King smiled. In reality, this method was personally tested by my clan's Purple Sea Dragon King several thousand years ago. It has been proven to be feasible. But at that time, the Yuhuang Celestial Sea suddenly arrived, causing the Violet Sea Dragon King to miss the opportunity to obtain the Penglai Immortal Mountain. The restrictions of the Nightmare Sea were restored, and the Penglai Immortal Mountain also hid in the Nightmare Sea, vanishing without a trace. In the end, he failed on the verge of success. The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King snorted lightly. Yuhuang can be considered harming others without benefiting herself. Lin Feng's heart stirred slightly, but he didn't reveal anything on his face. He only nodded and waited for the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King to continue. The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King said, "I believe that Xian Men's sect master should know that in the Ying Sea, there are demons called void spirits. They specialize in tricking people who enter the Ying Sea into an illusion to kill them. They grow stronger with the essence qi of the dead." Lin Feng nodded. He had encountered such vicious demons before and even killed a few of them. The void spirits can freely enter and exit the illusory void of the Ying Sea. They can even swim in the Nightmare Sea at the periphery of the Penglai Immortal Mountain. After the Violet Sea Dragon King discovered this, he extracted the blood of thousands of void spirits and used a secret ritual to refine it. As expected, he succeeded in breaking through the Nightmare Sea in a short period of time and opened up a way out. After listening to the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, Lin Feng pondered for a moment. After confirming that the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King's words were reasonable and not fabricated, he immediately said, "Very well, this seat will allow you to follow us." Although the Devouring Sun Great Sage didn't know what the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, Sword Venerable Tidehark, and Dao Venerable Changle had said to Lin Feng, they were communicating via voice transmission. They didn't intentionally conceal the fluctuations of their magic energy. Seeing the satisfied expressions on the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King's faces, he knew that they had provided sufficient information to Lin Feng. The Devouring Sun Great Sage was a little hesitant. He had also obtained some valuable information from the Golden Rock Great Sage, but after thinking about it, he didn't know if it was worth exchanging it with Lin Feng. Looking at the golden light emitted by the Liqing jade table pointing to the distant horizon, the devouring sun great sage gritted his teeth and sent a voice transmission to Lin Feng. Although the great Zhou dynasty has obtained Mount Fangzhang, it may not be in the bag. The dragon shadows floating above Mount Fangzhang were created when a large number of dragons entered the Ying Sea in ancient times and attacked Mount Fangzhang. However, they eventually fell, and this change appeared on Mount Fangzhang. It was also this wave of impact that greatly weakened the original defense of Mount Fangzhang. These dragon shadows became Mount Fangzhang's new magical restriction, and their power is naturally extraordinary. However, because they are new, they actually left a gap in the overall defense of Mount Fangzhang. The great Zhou dynasty must have started with this and thought of a way to finally break the restriction and obtain the Mount Fangzhang. The devouring sun great sage said in a low voice, according to the information that sect master Lin sent out before, this dragon shadow restriction is still active, and it doesn't seem to be any different from before. Then it's very likely that the great Zhou dynasty still hasn't had the time to make up for this oversight. To successfully refine the new mana restriction and the original restriction into one is not a simple matter. Emperor of Zhou Liang Pan and the Marquis of Xuanji Zhu Honggu don't have that much time. Just relying on Liang Pan's clone at the first layer of the primordial spirit realm to refine it will be an incomparably difficult and long matter. After hearing this, Lin Feng pondered for a while. He had personally collided with Mount Fangzhang that Liang Pan's clone controlled. After carefully thinking about it, he gradually had some understanding in his heart. The corners of his mouth hooked into a smile, looking at the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King, Devouring Sun Great Sage, Sword Venerable Heating Tide and Dao Venerable Changlu, he said, "I'll be leaving now, everyone please do as you please." After saying this, he brought Zhu Yi and the others along with him and flew away in the direction pointed by the golden light. Dao Venerable Changlu and the others looked at each other, bitterly smiling as they shook their heads. Lin Feng's action was equivalent to selling one piece of information to 4 people. 1 for 4, this transaction was really profitable. To be able to achieve such an effect, other than Lin Feng's strength being there and making it hard for others to work together, it is also related to the Greenly Jade set in Lin Feng's hands. Through the Greenly Jade set, Lin Feng has the most detailed, reliable and valuable clues to find the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Therefore, even though Dao Venerable Changlu and the others knew that Lin Feng was repeatedly selling information, they were still willing to use the clues in their hands to exchange for it. Therefore, although they bitterly smiled, everyone hurriedly followed. Lin Feng only allowed them to follow, he wouldn't take the initiative to point the way or wait for them. If anyone got lost, that would really be crying. Looking at Dao Venerable Changlu and the others who followed behind, Li Yuanfang looked at Lin Feng, but he didn't mind them following. Instead, he asked, "Master, should we focus on finding Yingzhou Immortal Mountain first?" From Li Yuanfang's point of view, it was better to concentrate on doing one thing first. Lin Feng smiled slightly, "Don't worry, I have my own arrangements." Only Lin Feng knew that he still had a hidden card in his hand. When collecting immortal mountains, obtaining it would have a miraculous effect, and that was the Daluo golden bead. Therefore, it was very important for Lin Feng to collect as much information as possible and strive to find each immortal mountain first. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang looked at each other and nodded, no longer asking anything. Since Lin Feng already had a plan, they naturally trusted Lin Feng's judgment. While hurrying along, Lin Feng also passed the news to Xiao Yan and the others. Although it was still difficult to communicate in the same Yingzhou Immortal Sea without the barrier of the domain power, they were not completely isolated. Xiao Yan and the others also happened to be in the northeast of Yingzhou Immortal Sea, so after Lin Feng roughly determined the location through Qingli Jade, he informed Xiao Yan and the others to also rush to Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. At the same time, Lin Feng also began to help Zhu Yi refine the Yang Sky Lantern and the Serene Sky Magic Robe that he had just obtained. The difficulty of restraining and suppressing Dharma treasures was different from completely refining them. If the Dharma treasures were willing to be refined, it meant that they were completely subdued. The Serene Sky Magic Robe was still fine. It was a little intimidated by Lin Feng and Zhu Yi's strong methods. As a new Dharma treasure, it was still very inexperienced. But the Yang Sky Lantern was different. Shao Qingqing's Yang Sky Lantern was a Dharma treasure passed down from ancient times. Back then, it had strength at the peak of the incarnation level. After being severely damaged, it had fallen to the spirit-nurturing level. It was very knowledgeable and was a Heavenly Gates treasure back then. Its mentality was naturally different from the newly refined Serene Sky magic robe. Even in the face of the true blood river water that could contaminate its primordial spirit, the Yang Sky Lantern would not yield. Yang Sky Lantern, you were also a proud person back then. You followed the Heavenly Gates to conquer the world and suppress the tyrannical emperor. Zhu Yi shouted, you are a Dharma treasure with intelligence. You can clearly see what is happening around you and can think. The great Zhou dynasty wants to restore the atmosphere of the ancient human emperor. But both you and I know that the era of the human emperor has already become a thing of the past and has been abandoned by the tide of history. The Heavenly Gates was the first sacred sect to stand out and officially depose the rule of the human emperor. They dared to be the first in the world. But today, the Eastern Heavenly Gates that you reside in wants to help the era of the human emperor return, trying in vain to reverse the tide of history. This goes against the general trend of humanity. How can you be called the Orthodox Heavenly Gates? They are just some scoundrels who have stolen the Tao techniques of the Heavenly Gates. They only learn the Tao techniques, but not the spirit. They go against the true ancient Heavenly Gates. Are you really willing to be in cahoots with them? The Yang Sky Lantern suddenly fell silent. The crimson light that flickered with golden light kept swaying. Zhu Yi's tone softened slightly. He continued, I see that your current state is probably not much different from when you were damaged back then. It is obvious that the people of the Eastern Heavenly Gates did not put in the effort to help you recover. At least, they did not put in their best effort. Is it also because you are not of the same mind as them, or because you have doubts? The crimson light of the Yang Sky Lantern shook violently, but it still did not make a sound. Zhu Yi said emotionally, if you trust me, I am willing to help you recover. You have your own intelligence and thoughts. You can take your time to observe. However, I have to say something. A sect like the Eastern Heavenly Gates that only knows the Tao techniques but has a completely different spirit cannot represent the inheritance of the Heavenly Gates. It is not easy for me to make a presumptuous judgment on whether the Heavenly Gates will be revived one day. But at the very least, the Eastern Heavenly Gates are just scoundrels who are continuously ruining the reputation of the Heavenly Gates. Lin Feng saw that the attitude of the Yang Sky Lantern was becoming softer. He then looked at Zhu Yi and could not help but shake his head and laugh. TSK, Xiao Yi has the momentum of surpassing her master. Her mouth is unparalleled. After Lin Feng smiled, his heart suddenly moved slightly. It came from the faraway Yujing mountain. Oh, my main body has finally finished. In that case, my main body can also move over to Yingxi. Chapter 756. In the void above Kunlun Mountain, Lin Feng's main body sat cross-legged at the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree on the peak of Jade Capital Mountain. He looked at the floating light spots in front of him and smiled. Although the Yingxi's 3 mountains arrived a year earlier than expected, it doesn't matter. He stood up, and Jade Capital Mountain shook as well. It began to shift in the void towards the East Sea. In the Yingxi, Lin Feng's Iron Tree avatar led Zhu Yi and the rest to search for Yingzhou Immortal Mountain according to the directions given by Qingli Jade Tables. While hurrying along, Lin Feng and Zhu Yi were also interrogating the captives they had captured. No matter if it was the Serene Sky Mage Robe or his previous master Yin Sungchen, they were unable to hide anything in front of Lin Feng and Zhu Yi. They could only spill everything they knew in full detail. Although he did not use the Yellow Springs True Water to refine the Netherworld puppet, nor did he have the mysterious Sky God's sealing flag, Lin Feng still had a way to make them speak the truth. From what I know, when the Heavenly Gates was destroyed back then, most of the 9 treasures of the Heavenly Gates were destroyed. Other than the East Sungtian Dao Jian and the Southwest Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, the rest were all severely damaged. Lin Feng asked. The northeast sky banner, the northwest serene sky robe, the west dark sky jade needle, and the south blazing sky divine cauldron were all completely destroyed. I wonder how many of them your east heavenly gate has collected. Being imprisoned by Zhu Yi's light and darkness mandala world barrier, Yin Sungchen was very sensible. He knew that if he did not tell the truth, he would immediately die from the world's destruction simulated by the barrier's collapse. In fact, he was not a frivolous person. He deliberately made up Meng Bingyun to provoke Zhu Yi so that Zhu Yi would stop and attack him. This way, as long as he could defend against Zhu Yi's attack, Xiao Qingcheng and the rest could catch up. By then, Zhu Yi would definitely not be able to escape. However, he did not expect that Lin Feng had already arrived, and Zhu Yi's strength was far beyond his imagination. In the end, he could only end in tragedy. I have to preserve my life to find a chance to escape. Only after I escape can I talk about revenge or anything else. After thinking calmly, Yin Sungchen answered honestly, our sect now has the North Black Heaven Seal, the Southwest Vermilion Heaven Pagoda, and, he glanced at Zhu Yi, and the Southeast Yang Sky Lantern. Aside from that, the Western Sky Blue Needle of Emerald Light was not completely destroyed. Instead, the treasure's origin spirit was destroyed, leaving behind only an empty shell. It fell into the hands of our sect, and after being refined and repaired, its origin spirit was reborn. It is now at the spirit nurturing stage. The Northwest Serene Sky Magic Robe and South Blazing Sky Divine Cauldron were indeed completely destroyed. Our seniors reforged them according to the ancient method and obtained 2 spirit nurturing level magic treasures. Among them, the Serene Sky Magic Robe is my protective treasure. At this point, Yin Sungchen felt like vomiting blood. He was a rising talent that East Heaven Gate highly valued, which was why he was only at late-stage Yuanying cultivation level. This time, the sect bestowed him a magic treasure to protect him when he came to Ing Ocean. Although it was not as ancient as Xiao Qingcheng's Yang Sky Lantern, it was still quite extraordinary. Logically speaking, given his cultivation level and the Serene Sky Magic Robe, even if he could not defeat some Essence Soul cultivators, he had a chance of escaping. Who would have thought that he would encounter the combination of Zhu Yi and the Supreme Saint Ancient Robe? His defense was broken in one move, and he was captured. Even the Serene Sky Magic Robe fell into their hands. Lin Feng nodded. Oh, the Red Sky Pagoda is also in your hands? Yin Sungchen answered, that's right, our sect uses it as a grotto heaven. The Red Sky Pagoda was a magic treasure at the peak of the transformation grade in the past. Like the Hidden Dragon Kettle and the Immortal Emperor flag, it had a grotto heaven inside and had the ability to absorb stars and change moons. It was rather magical, and at the same time, it was also one of the few magic treasures among the 9 treasures of the Heavenly Gate that had not been destroyed. If the Heavenly Gate had not been destroyed during the last years of the ancient times and continued to exist until today, this magic treasure would have a high chance of advancing to the Mahayana grade. However, what made Lin Feng and Zhu Yi slightly concerned was that this treasure also had the ability to hide in the void, and it was very difficult for outsiders to discover traces of it. Because of this, East Heaven Gate treated this treasure as a supreme treasure after obtaining it and used it as their lair. For so many years, East Heaven Gate had kept a low profile, and there was very little news about it. This was also thanks to this treasure. To a certain extent, East Heaven Gate using the Red Sky Pagoda as their blessed land was similar to Lin Feng's Yujing Mountain. It was just that the Red Sky Pagoda was not as powerful as Yujing Mountain, and it could not move freely in the void, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Wherever the Red Sky Pagoda hid in the void, it would basically still be in the same place when it appeared again. The Black Sky Seal is controlled by my master, who is also our sect master, Dao Venerate Xiao Dong Tian. It is now my master's magic treasure. Yin Sungchen continued, however, the Black Sky Seal was also heavily injured back then, and it fell from the Mahayana grade to the transformation grade. A considerable part of our sect's energy was used to repair this magic treasure, but the damage was too heavy back then, so until now, it has not been able to recover to the Mahayana grade. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang looked at each other and shook their heads. Jia Yuan Bai Guang, the husband and wife from the Taishu Temple's dragon pool, also sighed endlessly. Excluding the creation magic treasure Great Heavenly Will that suppressed the heavens, and excluding the 9 heavens sword that only existed in the plan, the Heavenly Gate back then had 5 magic treasures of the Mahayana grade, the Heavenly Jade, the Tsungtian Dao Jian, the Black Sky Seal, the Heavenly Jade Needle, and the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron. Putting aside the number of mighty cultivators in the Heavenly Gate, just these 5 magic treasures of the Mahayana grade were actually equivalent to 5 primordial spirit 3rd-tier Dao integration realm experts. Back then, the ancient Heavenly Gate, which was at its peak, was truly a colossus and super sacred land that could challenge the Taishu Temple of the same era. Lin Feng asked another question, did you refine the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron again? How is its effect compared to the ancient Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron? Although the Heavenly Jade was the leader of the 9 treasures of the Heavenly Gate and was known as the number 1 treasure of the Heavenly Gate below the Great Heavenly Wheel, in Lin Feng's opinion, the Heavenly Jade's value was not comparable to the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron. In different positions, one would naturally see things from different angles. If people like Lin Feng, Yan Nanlai, Xia Longsheng, Liang Pan, and Sure you were to evaluate it, the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron was the number 1 treasure of the 9 treasures of the ancient Heavenly Gate. From a certain perspective, it could even be said that the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron was an important treasure of the same value as the Great Heavenly Wheel. Together, they created the short but glorious peak of the ancient Heavenly Gate. If the Heavenly Gate had not been destroyed in the ancient era, the Heavenly Gate would have become stronger and stronger. This was because the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron was one of the most powerful magic treasures in the history of the human cultivation world in the Divine Land. It was second only to Xia Huang's creation magic treasure, Ding of Shenzhou. Back when the Heavenly Gate was at its peak, as long as the supply of raw materials could be guaranteed, the number of elixirs refined by the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron in a single day was an astronomical figure. All kinds of powerful elixirs with different effects were refined and continuously supplied to the Heavenly Gate disciples for cultivation. A large amount of resources might not be able to accumulate absolute experts, but it could accumulate a large number of middle-level talents. With a large number of talents at this level, the probability of high-level experts appearing would naturally increase as well. Of course, the prerequisite was that the cultivator's state of mind, willpower, and other comprehensive standards had to pass as well. For example, when Wang Lin was at the foundation establishment stage, Lin Feng had used a large amount of resources to forcefully build a first-grade spirit platform. Now, with the support of the Cloud Forest Tree, Xiao Yan, Zhu Yi, and the rest had sufficient spirit qi as support during the process of cultivation. Thus, they could ensure rapid improvement and would not be hindered by hardware conditions. Yin Sungchen said, the reforged Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron has the same effect. However, this Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron of our sect is only at the spirit nurturing stage and cannot be compared to the magic treasure from the ancient times. After a slight pause, he added, according to the historical records, compared to when the Flaming Sky Divine Cauldron was at the spirit nurturing stage, it is also slightly inferior. Zhu Yi said indifferently, even so, it is already extraordinary. Previously, they already knew that there were a total of 4 Essence Soul experts in the Eastern Heavenly Gate, including Xiao Qingcheng. Among them, Yin Sungchen's master, who was also Xiao Qingcheng's father, Xiao Dongtian, had just reached the Essence Soul unification stage not long ago. Such strength was already above many sects and forces in the Divine Land. It must have been difficult for them to endure until today. After keeping the Yang Sky Lantern, the Serene Sky Robe, and Yin Sungchen, the group continued to move forward. Zhu Yi suddenly came to a realization. Oh right, Master, when we just entered Ing Ocean, Mr. Miao said that he would separate from us and left alone. However, he did not leave behind a voice transmission crystal. Sixth junior brother reminded him, but he acted as if he did not hear anything and left. Now that there is news of Ing Zhou Immortal Mountain, we can't contact him either. Lin Feng said, let him be. The thing he is looking for is called the Round Jade Annulus. Legend has it that it is a unique specialty of Ing Zhou Immortal Mountain. Once he receives news of Ing Zhou Immortal Mountain, he will probably look for it himself. If he can't find it, if the few of you are able to ascend the immortal mountain, just help him keep an eye out. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang nodded upon hearing that. They soon reached the end of the path guided by Qingli Jade Annulus. However, there was still thick fog in front of them, and they could not see the immortal mountain. However, Lin Feng and the others knew that the path guided by Qingli Jade Annulus was not wrong. They could clearly feel that there were more illusions in this area than in other places. At the same time, the power of each illusion was stronger and more secretive. There were countless illusions that could be detected, not to mention those that had not been discovered yet. Different from other people's guesses, Lin Feng had more convincing evidence. His heavenly scarlet golden pearl surged with purple light again. However, the intensity of the flicker this time was the same as when they approached Fangzhang Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng thought, it's not as strong as the first flicker. It seems that we unintentionally approached Penglai Immortal Mountain, which is still in hiding. Yuhuang Heavenly Sea is indeed related to Penglai Immortal Mountain. When we encountered Yingzhou and Fangzhang, the heavenly scarlet golden pearl also reacted. It should be due to the profound connection between the three mountains of Yingxi, which is why the reaction was not as strong as when we encountered Penglai Immortal Mountain. After carefully sensing for a while, Lin Feng revealed a slightly solemn expression. Zhu Yi, who was beside him, also revealed a similar expression. He looked at Lin Feng and said, Master, it seems that this Yingzhou Immortal Mountain is enveloped by an incomparably huge illusion. We need to enter the illusion and break it from the inside before we can truly reach Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng nodded and said, That's right. Let's go. After saying that, he took the lead and walked forward. Chapter 757. Lin Feng flew up from Jiayu's back and floated in the air. Looking left and right, he smiled and reached out a hand, touching the seemingly empty void in front of him. Very soon, a water ripple-like halo spread out rapidly from Lin Feng's palm towards the surroundings. Following this water ripple-like halo spreading out, a massive ball of light appeared in front of Lin Feng and the rest. This ball of light was extremely massive, looking like a star in close proximity. Lin Feng smiled and said, All right, let's go in. Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Jiayu, and White Light all nodded, following behind Lin Feng, stepping into the ball of light together. This ball of light was an enormous illusionary space. The moment Lin Feng entered, he discovered that Zhu Yi and the rest who were beside him had already disappeared at this moment. All right, let me see what mysteries this illusion of yours has. Lin Feng placed his hands behind his back and strode forward. Before his eyes was a vast expanse of white light, unable to see anything. Lin Feng was not in a hurry either, just slowly walking forward step by step just like that. Suddenly, the white light gradually dissipated, revealing a figure walking towards Lin Feng head-on. It was Yang Qing who followed Xiao Yan and the rest. Yang Qing had a deeply worried look. After meeting Lin Feng, he first bowed respectfully towards him, then asked nervously, Master, if I keep on being like this without any improvement, what should I do? Lin Feng looked at Yang Qing calmly and stared at him for a long time. When Yang Qing saw the situation, his expression became increasingly uneasy, his gaze revealing a look of guilt and dejection. He lowered his head to avoid Lin Feng's gaze, not daring to meet his eyes. Is this the reflection of the hidden worries in my heart? Lin Feng shook his head slightly and chuckled lightly, this illusion is a little interesting. Lin Feng did not pay attention to Yang Qing in front of him, but raised his head and looked around. If I am immersed in hidden worries, unable to correct my mentality, unable to firm my path, then I may continue to be trapped inside, and this illusion will begin to mysteriously corrode my divine soul, until my divine soul is completely obliterated. Hee, interesting. Lin Feng turned his head to look at Yang Qing again. He saw Yang Qing's dazed look, as if his entire person was about to completely collapse. This is not because Lin Feng was worried that Yang Qing would not improve or that he would look down on his disciple, but because Lin Feng was secretly worried that if Yang Qing was depressed for a long time, he might destroy himself. This is what Lin Feng was worried about. Yang Qing was now about to experience the embarrassment that Wang Lin experienced when he first entered the sect. His senior and junior brothers were all outstanding people, but he was the only one who was ordinary and had even become a hindrance and a disgrace to his master. Wang Lin withstood such pressure, and the clouds parted to see the moon. But if it was Yang Qing who had to bear it, it would be fine if it was a short time, but if it was a long time, it would be hard to say whether he could endure it or not. In fact, although Yang Qing's willpower was not so outstanding and tenacious over the years, it was much better than when he was young. But in Lin Feng's view, if he really fell into the same situation as Wang Lin, at least he was not sure that he would be able to survive. It was because of this hidden worry that Lin Feng was now in this illusion, and the current scene was reflected. It seems that it is time for me to let you go out and experience a good storm. Under my protection, you can't walk your own path in life. At this moment, Lin Feng did not call himself a master, and he was not even looking at Yang Qing in front of him when he spoke. His gaze went over Yang Qing's shoulder and looked into the distance, as if he was talking to himself. Hearing this, Yang Qing lowered her head and said, "Then, if this disciple dies outside, or experiences a particularly big blow, will he be silent?" This was not what Yang Qing was thinking, but another hidden worry in Lin Feng's heart. Only in this way can you really grow up, become a talent, and live your life to the fullest. This is my responsibility as a master, and not blindly protect a nestling, and in the end, turn an eagle into a pheasant that can't fly high. Falling and psychological collapse are indeed possible, but how many things in the world can be reaped without paying? If you want to succeed, you must have the courage to bear the risk of failure. The only thing you can do is to increase the possibility of success as much as possible, and use various means to increase your chances of success as much as possible. Silently, Lin Feng said, "I will give you the right to choose, but I believe that you will not let me down." At this time, Yang Qing, who was in front of him, raised his head and looked at Lin Feng with a slight smile. "Yes, master." Before his voice fell, his figure had already disappeared in front of Lin Feng. Lin Feng's expression was neither sad nor happy, and he continued to move forward. Soon, another person appeared in front of him, but it was Zhu Yi, who had just disappeared not long ago. Zhu Yi's expression was solemn. After seeing Lin Feng, he saluted, and then opened his mouth to ask, "Master, this disciple feels that you are very biased." "Oh, why do you think so?" Lin Feng asked calmly. Zhu Yi replied very seriously, "When third junior brother was cultivating in the qi refining stage and the foundation building stage, you painstakingly looked for all kinds of resources to help third junior brother improve, and you always paid attention to his psychological trend, enlightened him from time to time, and helped him reduce the pressure. The outside world said that third junior brother is an example of you making a mistake, and you have always supported him and protected him." Lin Feng's expression was calm. "Is there anything else?" Zhu Yi went on to say, "Before eldest senior brother formed his nascent soul, you also painstakingly helped him personally draw up the method of combining the 5 kinds of true fire, and also protected him, so that after he successfully formed his nascent soul, his supernatural power and supernatural power were amazing." Lin Feng asked again, "Is there anything else?" Zhu Yi nodded. "Youngest junior brother, perhaps because he was still a child under your tutelage, you almost watched him grow up, raised him up, and raised him into an adult. For youngest junior brother, you are really like a teacher and a father. Even his biological parents and his grandfather did not devote as much effort to him as you did. When youngest junior brother went through the tribulation of chilly wind to make up for the congenital loophole of the 9 apertures golden elixir, the tangible resources and intangible efforts you spent were no less than what third junior brother spent when he was in the foundation establishment realm. Later on, you even withstood the pressure from the world's #1 holy land, Taishu Temple, for youngest junior brother, and supported him to seek justice. At that time in the divine land, who knows how many people secretly criticized you for being crazy and not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth, daring to make an enemy of the Taishu Temple for a mere young disciple." Zhu Yi looked at Lin Feng seriously. "Among the 4 disciples that you valued the most, only I was almost left to my own devices. Apart from the time when I condensed the elixir tripod, when you took me to the vast sea trading conference to seek the light Taoist law, you never gave me any special care. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi and suddenly laughed. This was also the projection of the hidden worries in Lin Feng's heart. He was worried that Zhu Yi would have a gap between him and his disciple. This was not something to be ashamed of, nor was it a matter of having one's warm face pressed against one's buttocks, but a normal friendship between people. Naturally, one would care about the relationship between the two parties, and at the same time, worry about all kinds of possible gains and losses. It had nothing to do with the level of one's cultivation, and it had nothing to do with one's temperament and willpower. As long as one's feelings were normal, they would have such thoughts. Lin Feng looked at Zhu Yi and asked with a smile, apart from the time when you condensed the elixir tripod, have you encountered anything that particularly needed my help? Zhu Yi shook his head. No. Lin Feng smiled and said, that's it. You have almost done everything to the best of your ability. Why should I still criticize and add fuel to the fire? You are my most worry-free disciple. Apart from doing what a master should do, I will not interfere and cause trouble for you. Think about it. When you have already done everything you should do, there is still someone buzzing in your ear like a fly, constantly saying, you should do this, you should do that. Such a person, don't you find it annoying? Do you want to slap him to death? Zhu Yi nodded. Of course I want to slap him to death. My ear will be quiet. Lin Feng clapped his hands and said with a smile, that's right. I don't want to be that kind of person. Then, Lin Feng's smile disappeared, and his expression became serious. But when you encounter a very difficult problem in your current situation like Little Yen, Little Lin, Little Tot, and the others, I will naturally not sit by and do nothing. I will do my best to help you solve it. Lin Feng stared into Zhu Yi's eyes and said slowly, and I believe that Little Yi, you will understand my approach and my thoughts. Zhu Yi's face, which had been serious since he appeared, finally revealed a smile. He nodded and said, yes, master. Watching Zhu Yi's figure gradually disappear in front of him, Lin Feng could not help but shake his head and laugh. In this illusion, he took the opportunity to sort out some of the deep thoughts in his heart. These hidden worries were actually very small worries. Like subconsciousness, people might subconsciously avoid these things and would not clearly think about these things in their minds. Like little bugs, Lin Feng was deep in the illusion. Instead, with the help of this illusion, he found the little bugs one by one. For cultivation, it was actually a kind of invisible improvement. Then, Lin Feng met other people, all of whom were reflections of the hidden worries in his heart. There was Buddhist monk Dade who said that the Big Lain Temple was at its peak when it was founded, but after Gautama Buddha and the top 10 disciples, Buddhism declined from generation to generation. How could Xianmen Tianzong avoid following in their footsteps? Lin Feng did not count himself. The first generation of disciples of Xianmen Tianzong was too amazing and almost impossible to replicate. Although Lin Feng carefully selected the seeds for the second and third generation, they were still inferior to the first generation. Such a momentum was similar to that of the Big Lain Temple in the past. Shen Qifeng said that in the past when Taoist reincarnation created the reincarnation doctrine, it had a great momentum, but when Taoist reincarnation accidentally fell, the sect immediately fell apart, internal strife was endless, and the sect became a plate of loose sand. Now the Xianmen Sky sect is also tied to Lin Feng. If he falls, what will be the fate of the sect? The disciples under his sect were all amazingly talented, and all of them were children of heaven. Only he could lead them. If he disappeared, the division of Xianmen Tianzong would be inevitable. There was Xian Li who said that the pinnacle of the heaven-punishing sword was to kill everything, including the heaven-punishing sword itself. Naturally, it also included its owner, Lin Feng. These hidden worries, Lin Feng faced them one by one. He was calm and firm in his beliefs. Looking at it, it is from small to big, from shallow to deep, from light to heavy. In the end, it is almost no longer a hidden worry. Many of them are problems that I seriously think about daily. As Lin Feng thought about it, he saw another figure appear in front of him. The current head of Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai. Chapter 758. The first thing that appeared in front of Lin Feng was a white cloud. The cloud trembled slightly, then parted to the sides, revealing a human figure. He had a head of long black hair, but his temples were as white as snow. From his appearance, he looked to be in his 20s or 30s. He was the current head of Taishu Temple, Yan Nanlai. He was situated in the middle of the white cloud, and two streams of air, one black and one white, continuously revolved around him. Lin Feng looked at Yan Nanlai. The two of them stared at each other in silence, neither of them saying a word. Although they did not converse like before, when the projection appeared, Lin Feng was very clear in his heart what the appearance of Yan Nanlai's projection represented. He wanted to be the number one ancestor in history, to establish the number one sect in history. There was a huge mountain that he could never avoid, and that was the most powerful sect in the history of the Divine Land, Taishu Temple. Because Taishu Temple's internal conservative faction was in power, they determined that Taishu Temple would avoid the world and keep a low profile. Even though they were used to using the world as a chess piece and were not aloof from worldly affairs, there were still many people who intentionally or unintentionally overlooked the strength of the human race's number one holy land. At the level of people like Lin Feng, Stonefeather, Xian Longsheng, and Liang Pan, they naturally would not look down on Taishu Temple. However, there were many lower-level cultivators who could not see it so clearly. Not to mention anything else, just within Lin Feng's own Xianmen Tianzong, there were some new foundation disciples who were quite disdainful towards Taishu Temple. Taishu Temple wants to be the boss. What are they? But in reality, it was not that Taishu Temple wanted to be the boss. Rather, this sect had always been the boss of the human race's cultivation world in the Divine Land, and had been the boss for tens of thousands of years. This was not to boost the opponent's morale and diminish one's own prestige. Only by knowing oneself and knowing the enemy, and facing the opponent's strength, could one discuss how to surpass them. Lin Feng had always understood this point very clearly. Taishu Temple had already existed in the ancient era of the human sovereign. Before the rise of other major powers, Taishu Temple was the only sect in the Divine Land that was not under the rule of the human sovereign. It only acknowledged the human sovereign in name, and had no intention of fighting for power. Instead, it wholeheartedly monitored the movements of the demon race in Infinite Wasteland. The founder of the Void Temple, Lord Taishu, was a figure from the same generation as the Grand Emperor. They experienced the end of the Archaic Era and the beginning of the Archaic Era together. He led the human cultivators to overthrow the demon race's enslavement. His cultivation was not inferior to the Grand Emperor in the slightest, but he did not fight with the Grand Emperor for the throne. After the Tai Huang fell, Lord Taishu once again modestly gave up the throne of the human sovereign. Only then did Ru Huang ascend the throne. After that, Ru Huang voluntarily abdicated and became a Buddha, founding the Tempest Temple. Lord Taishu humbly gave up the throne for the third time until he disappeared in the Dead Sea, never to be heard from again. This was the famous, 3 abdications of Taishu, in the ancient era of the human sovereign. Although Taishu Taoist had disappeared after he went to the Dead Sea, Taishu Temple still had its own transcendent position. Later, together with Heavenly Gate, they led the tide of the era and completely abolished the rule of the human sovereign, ending the ancient era. Other than the fact that there were many experts in the sect, the most important reason was the treasure that Taishu Taoist had passed down, the Haotian mirror. The number one treasure of divine origin, these 5 words explained everything. There was no need to describe it. Just by looking at the list of experts who had died to this Dharma treasure, one would know the power of this treasure. Zhuhuang Xian Shang, Jihuang Xinyuan, and Yuhuang Tianhai were the 3 strongest demon sovereigns in the history of the demon race. The cause of their deaths was closely related to the Haotian mirror. This creation Dharma treasure was like a stabilizing force in the human world, protecting the human race's divine land for generations to come. In history, the Haotian mirror was said to have suffered 3 major damages, which were related to the 3 demon sovereigns. Every time it was damaged, the Haotian mirror would need a long period of recuperation in order to recover to its perfect state. During this period of recuperation, Taishu Temple would not use the Haotian mirror easily, otherwise, it would slow down the recovery process. Of course, if it was necessary, Taishu Temple would not hesitate. However, from this point of view, it was not just the demon race in Tianhuang vast land, even the human race's divine land that had wanted to challenge the leadership of Taishu Temple over the years had to thank the three demon sovereigns. Lin Feng calmly looked at Yan Nanlai. Even if he knew that the Void Temple's strength was great, with experts as numerous as the clouds, and that they could almost rely on their own strength to contend against the entire divine continent, even if the Void Temple had the clear sky mirror to suppress the mountain gate, he would still not feel fear. Being inferior to them now did not mean that there was no possibility of surpassing them in the future. Everything depended on one's own efforts. To create the number one sect in history, to become the number one patriarch in history. This was Lin Feng's belief and vision. To be honest, just surpassing Taishu Temple might not be considered achieving his goal. If that was the case, what was there to be afraid of challenging and trying to surpass this colossus? His own vision was even grander than that, and also more ethereal and lofty. Lin Feng had never been afraid of Taishu Temple. At this moment, he was secretly worried. Actually, he was worried that if he and Xianmen Tianzong continued to grow and become stronger, until they had the ability to set off a storm in the human cultivation world in the divine land, would it cause serious internal friction in the human cultivation world if they were to go against Taishu Temple? Although there were the three concessions of Taishu Temple and the conservative policy behind them, Taishu Temple was used to being the boss. For many years, be it Tianmen sect, Great Thunderclap Temple, Primitive Demon Cult, Shushan Sword Sect and other sects, they all wanted to shake Taishu Temple's position, but in the end, none of them succeeded. But when Xianmen Tianzong really grew to the point where he had the ability to completely overthrow Taishu Temple, would Taishu Temple still be calm? Although he, Taishu Temple, and many other human race cultivators were closely watching the demon race in Infinite Wasteland to prevent the demon race from benefiting from the internal strife of the human race, how could everything go as planned? For example, the Enchantress, Golden Rock Sage, and other experts of the demon race were not puppets that could be manipulated according to his wishes. Everyone had their own plans. In the end, it was hard to say who would have the last laugh. If the demon race benefited because of the internal friction of the human race, this was something that Lin Feng could not accept. Perhaps when he reached a higher position in the future, he would change his way of thinking and the way he viewed the conflict between the human race and the demon race. But from his current position, he had to consider the threat of the demon race like Taishu Temple. When the nest is overturned, there will be no eggs left intact. Lin Feng looked at Yan Nanlai and suddenly laughed. Yan Nanlai, who had an indifferent expression, also laughed. Although their facial features were different, their expressions were very similar, as if they had been carved from the same mold. It's really a difficult task. Lin Feng chuckled. But it is precisely because of this that I want to see the scenery at the peak. How moving it is. Yan Nanlai's figure retreated into the white cloud once again. Soon, the white cloud also disappeared. When this projection disappeared, there were no other scenes in front of Lin Feng. There were only rays of white light that flickered before turning into light spots and dissipating. The scene in front of him suddenly became clear. Lin Feng looked up and found that he was once again in the Ying Sea. Looking behind him, there was a faint light screen that was almost transparent, and he could see the outside world. The illusion that he had experienced previously was actually the moment he passed through the light screen. It reflected the many hidden worries in the depths of his heart. However, if he was unable to strengthen his beliefs, his soul would be corroded by the illusion and he would be directly assimilated by the light screen, never to think of coming out again. This was an illusion that purely tested one's willpower. It had nothing to do with the cultivation of the person who entered. The light screen illusion was very profound. Once a person passed through it, the illusion would gradually collapse. Lin Feng saw the light screen gradually shattering. Amidst the light spots, Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Jiayu, white light, and the others also appeared. Their expressions were somewhat startled. Although this illusion is dangerous, it is also a good place to sharpen one's Tao heart. Lin Feng smiled. Zhu Yi and the others nodded. Then, everyone looked forward and saw a huge island and celestial mountain floating above the sea. A slightly trembling voice came from the Liqingyu table. Yingzhou Celestial Mountain. Zhu Yi and the others also held their breath and focused, looking at the huge celestial mountain in front of them. The space around the celestial mountain was slightly distorted, causing it to float above the Yingzhou Celestial Mountain, making its size appear less exaggerated. But in reality, like Fangzhang Celestial Mountain, Yingzhou Celestial Mountain was also as huge as a small piece of land. Although it was not as huge as Fangzhang Celestial Mountain, its circumference reached a full 4,000 miles. Lin Feng stared at Yingzhou Celestial Mountain and raised his brows slightly. It is indeed an ancient array formation born from heaven and earth. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang carefully observed Yingzhou Celestial Mountain. Indeed, in the distorted space above the Celestial Mountain, there seemed to be tens of millions of transparent jade slabs floating, crystal clear, and smooth. However, these jade slabs were extremely huge. They were rectangular, and each of them was half an acre in size. They were stacked together and spread out at the same time, wrapping Yingzhou Celestial Mountain within like a sphere. Although it is abnormally exquisite, it is already very weak, Li Yuanfang took a deep breath and said while staring at the ancient array formation. Lin Feng waved his hand. There's no time to lose. Let's go down. After saying that, he led Zhu Yi and the rest to fly towards Yingzhou Celestial Mountain that was protected by the ancient array formation. Dao Master Chang'e and the rest, who were following behind them, also stared at Yingzhou Celestial Mountain with their eyes wide open. All of them were eager to make a move. Even though Lin Feng was right in front of them, they could not wait to pounce on him. Lin Feng ignored them. As he flew towards Yingzhou Celestial Mountain, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the void above the Celestial Mountain. They are indeed here. The white clouds above the Yingzhou Celestial Mountain seemed to be burning and turned into a dazzling golden light. A vague shadow appeared in the golden light. Although its appearance could not be seen clearly, one could still feel its heavy, vigorous, domineering, and majestic aura. It was as if it carried the weight of the country and ruled over the world. Countless talismans and curse seals flew and spread in all directions along with the purplish golden light. A city-like palace complex appeared in the middle of the light. The main hall, side hall, courtyard, seal platform, and tall buildings together formed a palace that looked like the residence of an immortal king. It was like the sun in the sky, full of majesty. Slowly, Lin Feng nodded. Tai Huang Imperial Palace. This palace was the creation magic treasure refined by the Tai Huang Imperial Palace, which later fell into the hands of the great Zhou dynasty. Chapter 759. The Grand Imperial Palace was a creation treasure created by the first emperor who ended the immemorial epoch and started the Olden Epoch. In the past, he had joined forces with the Haotian Mirror to kill the demon race's sacred emperor, Absolute Emperor Xian Shang. He had also killed many of the dragon race's experts, single-handedly ending the primordial celestial dragon race's ruling position in the heaven primordial world. However, it was a pity that the Grand Emperor had fallen because of this, and the Grand Imperial Palace had also been heavily damaged. It had been silent for countless years. It was only after the great Zhou dynasty unearthed it and smelted countless treasures into it that it gradually recovered. It was the foundation of the great Zhou dynasty's rise to power. During the Buddha Vanquishing War, Emperor Liang Pan of Zhou used this treasure to kill the last abbot of the Great Leyin Temple, establishing the great Zhou dynasty's current dominant position. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. Even though Mount Meru had been destroyed, the Great Thunderclap Temple's desperate counterattack caused the Grand Imperial Palace, which had not been completely repaired, to suffer another blow. Lin Feng had previously come into close contact with the Grand Imperial Palace in Cloudwood World, and even used Jade Capital Mountain to clash head-on with the Grand Imperial Palace. But at that time, the Supreme Imperial Palace was even weaker than it was during the Buddha Vanquishing War. It was far from the supreme treasure of fortune that dominated the Divine Land. At this moment, Lin Feng only had to glance at the Imperial Palace to know that even though it hadn't completely recovered to its peak state of the past, it was only a thread away, and it wasn't inferior to the Immortal Dragon City, Taishu Temple, and other creation magic treasures. When they met in the Cloud Forest realm, the Grand Imperial Palace was already quite extraordinary. Billions of people worshipped and obeyed their wills gathered on the palace. Above the tens of thousands of people, many wise sages and great scholars bowed towards the palace. They condensed into the laws of heaven and earth. Boundless laws also supported the Grand Imperial Palace. Between the palaces, many fairy maidservants made of light and shadow walked around, holding bejeweled nectar, as if they were welcoming a golden age. In the sky above the Imperial Palace, there were tens of thousands of immortals paying their respects. Anyone who saw it would feel their heart tremble. However, at that time, everything was just an illusion that only existed in the purple-gold radiance around the Grand Imperial Palace. Now, be it the subjects, the scholars, the fairies, or even the countless immortals, deities, or Buddhas, all of them had materialized. It was like a real Nine Heavens Celestial Emperor's celestial palace. Just one look at it would make one want to prostrate themselves in worship. Even Lin Feng, facing this treasure with his Iron Tree avatar, felt his divine soul tremble, as if a grand and complete world of creation was pressing down on his head. Even when facing the suppression of the Fangzhang Immortal Mountain previously, he did not feel this much pressure. As soon as the Grand Imperial Palace appeared, all the white clouds and smoke around the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain were swept away. The Yingzhou Immortal Sea surged, and light and shadow changed. One after another, distorted and swaying illusions flickered, and then burst like bubbles. Although there were no top-notch illusory realms and most of them were low-level illusory realms, some of them were powerful ones that could even trap primordial divinity realm strongmen. But at this moment, facing the pressure of the Grand Imperial Palace, they were like fragile porcelain, turning into nothingness. This was under the situation where the Grand Imperial Palace did not specifically target them. Just the aftershock was enough to make these illusory realms collapse. They did not avoid the illusory realms, nor did they break the illusory realms from the inside. Instead, they forcibly destroyed them from the outside, destroying the profound principles that made up these illusory realms. They shattered the flow of spiritual energy, and directly crushed them with an incomparably domineering aura. Seeing this, Lin Feng shook his head and laughed. Not only did they inherit the Grand Imperial Palace, but they also inherited the domineering style of the Grand Emperor. As soon as the Grand Imperial Palace appeared, it ignored Lin Feng and the others, as well as Dao Master Chang'e and the Crimson Thunder Dragon King. It directly pounced on the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain below. Emperor Zhou had always been very clear about what to do and when to do it. Under the illumination of the Grand Imperial Palace's star-like purple-gold radiance, the ancient formation on the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain suddenly trembled violently. Liang Pan was not interested in slowly deducing the changes of the formation. Instead, he directly used the brute force of the treasure of creation to crack it. However, at the same time he approached the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, an immeasurable shadow of light pierced through the void like a dragon. It was millions of miles long and stretched across the sky. An insurmountable, indestructible, and powerful aura that seemed to protect the entire world of creation filled the void, forcing the shocking aura of the Grand Imperial Palace back. It was a city wall that flickered with eternal light, and it exuded a powerful aura that seemed as if it would protect all things forever. It was not inferior to the Grand Imperial Palace in the slightest. It was the Immortal Dragon City, a creation magic treasure refined by the first human emperor of the primordial human race, the first emperor, and finally completed by the Great Qin dynasty. The two great treasures of creation collided head-on. In the sky above the Grand Imperial Palace, purple gold light flashed and turned into a green chaotic hole. From this green chaotic hole, masses of green air flew out one after another. Within these masses of air, there was a dull sound of thunder exploding. It was the Grand Emperor's chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder. The majesty of the Grand Emperor. Anyone who disobeyed would be killed with the green lightning. Lin Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. At this moment, the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder that the Grand Imperial Palace released was much stronger than in the cloudy forest realm. The green air masses were really like the immortal lightning during the primordial world, destroying chaos. The Scarlet Thunder Dragon King hid far away. His 8 trigrams divine lightning was much weaker than the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder. Even the Brontosaurus King's 8 trigrams divine lightning might not be comparable to the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder. Moreover, the Grand Imperial Palace released so many green lightning at once. Above the immortal dragon city, a middle-aged man wearing a crown and a dragon robe suddenly appeared. He was Qin Emperor Stonefeather. He looked at the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder that was shooting towards him and said calmly, "Liang Pan, you've finally reached the primordial spirit realm." As he spoke, the immortal dragon city lit up with a misty radiance. It looked ordinary, but when the Grand Imperial Palace's chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder landed on this radiance, it didn't even cause a ripple. It shattered and turned into clouds that looked like cyan lightning. With the immortal dragon city as the dividing line, on one side of the city wall, the void cracked and lightning raged. On the other side, it was calm and there were no changes. This strange and profound scene further displayed the immortal dragon city's strength. It was exceptionally shocking to watch. In the Grand Imperial Palace, Zhou Emperor Liang Pan watched this scene calmly. He was also wearing a dragon robe and was filled with the majesty of a Grand Emperor. However, compared to before, his might was stronger. It wasn't just because of the Grand Imperial Palace beneath his feet, but also because of his own strength. The 2 rulers of the most powerful dynasties in the Divine Land looked at each other calmly, separated by the divine powers of the 2 creation treasures. Not long before the appearance of the Yingxi's 3 mountains, when Xianmen Tianzong held the Kunlun Mountain Dharma Assembly, I finally succeeded in Tao integration, Liang Pan said silently as he sat on the dragon throne in the Grand Imperial Palace. Sure, you nodded. Congratulations. You're the first member of the royal family to reach the primordial spirit realm since the founding of the great Zhou dynasty. Liang Pan smiled. This is just the beginning. He looked at the immortal dragon city, which was completely unmoved by the chaotic whole immortal slaying thunder. Slowly, he said, as expected of the creation treasure passed down by the founding emperor. Your great Qin dynasty has finally refined this treasure. It's a pity that the founding emperor's intent realm when refining this treasure has determined that this treasure is strong in defense but weak in offense. Even the Grand Imperial Palace at its peak is probably inferior to it. However, defense will always be passive. It's indeed not easy for the Grand Imperial Palace to break through the Immortal Dragon City, but the Immortal Dragon City can't do anything to the Grand Imperial Palace. In the battle between you and me, I'm already in an undefeatable position, while you can only passively take a beating. Whether you want to fight, stay, or take the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, I have the initiative. Before he finished his sentence, the purplish gold radiance around the Grand Imperial Palace flashed rapidly, and a huge chaotic hole appeared above the Grand Imperial Palace. The purplish gold radiance kept gathering in it, and at the next moment, 2 light pillars, one black and one white, rushed out. The black and white light pillars intertwined with each other in a spiral, blasting toward the Immortal Dragon City, which was obstructing him from approaching the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Dual magnetic chaotic hole divine light. Wherever the black and white spiral light pillars passed, the void would completely collapse, and destructive magnetic storms instantly spread throughout the entire space. Even places thousands of miles away were affected. Electric sparks flashed everywhere in the void, and a large number of metal items were distorted and deformed. Seawater was evaporating violently. Even ordinary third-tier primordial spirit realm experts wouldn't dare to face this divine light head-on, as they would be killed immediately. This was a destructive divine power that unleashed the dual magnetic forces to the extreme. Stone Feather said indifferently, Liang Pan, what you said is absurd. The ones who are undefeatable are me and the immortal dragon city. No matter what divine power your grand imperial palace uses, it can't do anything to the immortal dragon city of the great Qin Empire. Rays of light lit up on the city walls that spanned millions of kilometers. Within the light, there were countless figures standing shoulder to shoulder on the city walls. They were united as a fortress, and they let out a battle cry that shook the heavens. This battle cry caused the surrounding space to gradually distort. Even a primordial spirit realm expert like Sword Venerable Tide Hark almost lost his composure. It was as if a scene appeared before his eyes, and he saw countless human experts from the primordial era advancing wave after wave in order to overthrow the demon race's enslavement. Don't yield, rise up, be brave, be fearless, unite as one, and protect your compatriots. This was the noble will of power shared by humans that had been passed down for millions of years. Everyone present was affected by it, and they wished they could pour part of their power into the immortal dragon city. They were united as a fortress, and they fought together. The human Tao will of the entire divine land seemed to pass through layers of the void and reinforce the immortal dragon city in the Yinghai Ocean. This powerful will was the true immortality, the true eternal radiance. Even the two poles origin magnetic chaotic whole divine light couldn't get any closer to this light. The violent magnetic light continued to disintegrate, and it further distorted the surrounding space-time. The collision of the two Dharma treasures of creation completely turned the surroundings into a dangerous place. Even primordial spirit realm cultivators would be affected if they approached. The collision of Dharma treasures of creation is indeed extraordinary. Lin Feng watched with great interest. Strictly speaking, this was his first time witnessing a battle between two Dharma treasures of creation. In the Battle of West Hill City, he had faced the immortal Heaven Sword and Taishu Temple himself. That was because he had used various methods and could fight against Dharma treasures of creation for a certain period of time. However, Lin Feng didn't have a genuine Dharma treasure of creation with him. As expected, they said they were going to find Peng Lai, but it was all a smokescreen. In fact, they were all coming for Yingzhou. But isn't it the same for me? While the Grand Imperial Palace and the Immortal Dragon City were in a stalemate, the void shook again. A vast and vigorous aura traveled through the void and appeared in the sky above Yingzhou's Spirit Mountain. It was a white jade spirit mountain that was much smaller than Yingzhou's Spirit Mountain, but it was more powerful. Chapter 760. A tide of purple mist suddenly appeared in the sky above Yingzhou Fairy Mountain and kept spreading in all directions, dyeing the entire sky purple in the blink of an eye. In the center of the purple sea of clouds that was hundreds of thousands of acres wide, a white jade-like mountain was faintly discernible. At the foot of the mountain was a pitch-black sea that set off the white jade mountain. It was magnificent and shocking. Yujing Mountain. The moment the purple sea of clouds appeared, the Grand Imperial Palace and the Immortal Dragon City stopped fighting. They each retreated in the void, forming a tripartite confrontation with Yujing Mountain. At the top of the Xiantian treasure tree on top of Yujing Mountain, Lin Feng sat cross-legged in a purple robe. Behind him, a girl with long black and white hair stood silently, carrying a giant sword case on her back. Lin Feng smiled and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoists. You've given me a feast for my eyes." The others, such as Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Tao Master Chang'e, and Sword Venerable Tide Listening, didn't dare to speak like Lin Feng, but they all nodded in their hearts. The rulers of the two dynasties in the Divine Land, Liang Pan and Stone Feather, respectively controlled the Grand Imperial Palace and the Immortal Dragon City, clashing fiercely in the sky above Yingzhou Fairy Mountain, one of the three mountains of Yingzhou Fairy Mountain. It was a rare scene. One was the Great Layin Temple, the sacred land of Buddhism, which had been destroyed after the ancient era, was damaged again and repaired. It could finally show some of the glorious power that dominated the divine land in the ancient era. The other was forged in the Archean era. It originated from the idea of the first human emperor of the human race, but it had never been fully refined. It was only in recent years that it was completely refined, shocking the world. It was said that Immortal Dragon City was strong in defense but weak in offense. It didn't mean that Immortal Dragon City's offense was weak. Now that it saw this magic treasure again, it was much stronger than when it was first refined in the Battle of West Hill City. If it was said that the giant had just woken up and was still sleepy, then it was completely awake now. It was the powerful will that was born in the Archean era when the human race resisted the demon race's dark rule for the first time. It was inherited from this magic treasure of creation, and it had lasted for countless years until now. This was the will of the Tao, the accumulation of the long river of time. It was incomparably heavy, unshakable. However, the Grand Imperial Palace is known as the #1 treasure of creation created by the human emperor. It really lives up to its reputation. Lin Feng, who was watching this great battle from the side, smiled. He is still a step away from his peak, but he can still fight with Immortal Dragon City. However, this is also related to Immortal Dragon City's characteristics. Even if the Grand Imperial Palace reaches its peak, it might not be able to break Immortal Dragon City's defense. However, the Grand Imperial Palace at its peak is not something that Immortal Dragon City's relatively weak offensive power can shake. In the Immortal Dragon City, Qin Emperor Shiryu said, Sect Master Lin is also here for the Immortal Abode State Mountain. Although the relationship between the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong was much better than that of the Great Zhou Empire, it was impossible for them to give in to each other when it came to the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. The Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong were competitors. However, this did not affect them from working together to eliminate the Great Zhou Empire first. Then, the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong would slowly decide the victor. However, Emperor Liang Pan was very perceptive and had long thought of this. The Grand Imperial Palace was in the air, flashing with purple light. However, the palace itself was faintly discernible, and it could escape at any time to avoid being surrounded by Yujing Mountain and the Immortal Dragon City. As long as the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong showed the intention to work together, Liang Pan would immediately retreat. However, this did not mean that he had given up on the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Silently, he would wait outside for an opportunity. Just like that, the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong did not dare to go all out to fight for the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, in case the Great Zhou Empire suddenly jumped out to take advantage of the situation. On the top of the mysterious sky treasure tree, Lin Feng looked at the Grand Imperial Palace and thought, they are indeed vigilant. As soon as they saw me, they immediately stopped fighting and stopped fighting with Stone Feather. They are afraid that I will activate the Dharma-ending calamity the moment I see them. When that time comes, they will be trapped and unable to escape. In the Battle of West Hill City, Lin Feng had suddenly activated the Dharma-ending calamity game's black chess pieces when he was fighting with the Celestial Heaven Sword and Taishu Temple. This had caught Exa and Longsheng, Kuang Heng, and the others off guard, making it impossible for them to escape. They could only resist the Dharma-ending calamity's powerful nirvanic power. Liang Pan, who already knew that Lin Feng had this killer move, naturally raised his guard and did not give Lin Feng a chance to attack. At this moment, the Grand Imperial Palace's advantage over the Immortal Dragon City was revealed. As the attacking party, the Grand Imperial Palace might not be able to break through the Immortal Dragon City's defense, but they could retreat from the battlefield at any time. If Stone Feather and Liang Pan switched their creation Dharma treasures, the result would be completely different. Stone Feather would definitely entangle Liang Pan, making it impossible for him to escape. Meanwhile, Lin Feng would naturally be happy to join the battle and force the Great Zhou Empire out. However, you really don't need to be so cautious. Lin Feng smiled in his heart. The mold on the sky-covering umbrella had not been completely removed. In the Battle of West Hill City, he had activated 5 Dharma-ending calamities, causing the umbrella's surface to be mostly stained. Lin Feng estimated that the sky-covering umbrella could only withstand the power of 2 more black chess pieces at most before it completely collapsed. Lin Feng looked at Stone Feather on the Immortal Dragon City and said with a faint smile, "Greetings, Taoist Shi. I naturally yearn for the Yingxi's 3 mountains." Liang Pan and the Grand Imperial Palace could advance or retreat at will, so Lin Feng and Stonefeather would not fight to seize Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. The Grand Imperial Palace, the Immortal Dragon City, and the Jade Capital Mountain stood in the void together, forming a tripod and entering a standoff. Stonefeather suddenly said, "Sect Master Lin, why don't we cooperate? What do you think about splitting Yingzhou Immortal Mountain and Penglai Immortal Mountain? Liang Pan is happy to see us in a deadlock here." Zhu Hongguo and Fangzhang Immortal Mountain have already rushed to the southern part of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain to search for Penglai Immortal Mountain. Lin Feng smiled. Liang Pan's arrangements and Stonefeather's suggestion were more or less within his expectations. In all fairness, Stonefeather's suggestion was very good. Although they still had to wrangle over the specific details, it was a win-win situation for both Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin Empire. If the Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong could really control one immortal mountain each, they could seek further cooperation and continue to work together to suppress the Great Zhou Empire that had obtained Fangzhang Immortal Mountain. However, there were too many uncertain factors. For example, Penglai Immortal Mountain was nowhere to be seen. Who should refine Yingzhou Immortal Mountain first? If Penglai Immortal Mountain fell into the hands of the Great Zhou Empire during the time it took to seize Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, the Great Zhou Empire that had Penglai Immortal Mountain and Fangzhang Immortal Mountain would be invincible even if it did not dominate Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. This would be the worst outcome. If the Penglai Immortal Mountain was obtained by someone else, it would not be easy for Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin Empire to snatch it. The Great Zhou Empire would not sit idly by either. If the three mountains disappeared and Penglai Immortal Mountain was not obtained by someone else, one of Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin Empire would definitely be empty-handed. The party that had already refined Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, be it Lin Feng or Stonefeather, would not give up the Immortal Mountain that they had obtained. This was not because they were worried about splitting the loot before they obtained the treasure. It was because the two parties were working together to seek two treasures, and the timing was different. The second treasure was completely unknown. The Great Qin Empire and Xianmen Tianzong had always been on good terms, so they would not set each other up. One party would not abandon the other party after obtaining Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, but the cooperation was still full of uncertainties. This was also the reason why Xianmen Tianzong and the Great Qin Empire did not contact each other in advance before entering Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. It was because the uncertainties were too high, and whether they could find the Immortal Mountain was a problem. Now that they had finally seen a mountain of immortals, the alliance was no longer an unreliable castle in the air. If there were no better ideas, Lin Feng might eventually agree to Stonefeather's plan. But Lin Feng played with the golden mirage pearl in his hand, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "I have a better idea." Liang Pan did not say much about Stonefeather's proposal. At the level of him and Lin Feng, they had their own decisions and would not be easily swayed by other people's words. If Lin Feng agreed to Stonefeather's plan, then Liang Pan would immediately turn around and leave without hesitation to seize Penglai Immortal Mountain. Daoist Shi's proposal is very good, but in my opinion, the three mountains of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain is a natural treasure that gathers the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. It depends more on fate to see who gets it in the end. Lin Feng said with a smile, "Today, we might as well see the fate of our respective successors." As soon as he said this, Dao Master Changle and the others all had a strange expression. On the Immortal Dragon City, even Qin Emperor Stonefeather looked at Lin Feng with a slight surprise and thought, he has a well-thought-out plan and already has other arrangements. But, what will it be? In the Grand Imperial Palace, Zhou Emperor Liang Pan also frowned slightly. What a big appetite. He wants to monopolize Penglai Immortal Mountain and Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. What is he relying on? Putting aside Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, how will he arrange for Penglai Immortal Mountain? Lin Feng was well aware of other people's criticism, but he did not say much. He just continued to say with a smile, "I will stay here with the two of you and watch quietly. Let's see who will have this fate." At this time, Liang Pan finally said, "Sect Master Lin's breadth of mind is indeed extraordinary. You even treat Yingzhou Immortal Mountain as an ordinary thing. However, the 3 mountains of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain will only appear for a limited time. It won't be long before they disappear again. If we wait like this, I'm afraid we will miss the timing. Lin Feng said with a smile, that's also fate. If Daoist Liang can't wait, you can rush to the southern part of Yingzhou Immortal Mountain to meet up with Zhu Hongguo and Fangzhang Immortal Mountain. We will do our best to seize Penglai Immortal Mountain. After saying that, he turned to look at Zhu Yi and the others and said with a smile, you guys can go down now. Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, and the others looked at each other, bowed together, and landed on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain below. Both the Grand Imperial Palace and the Immortal Dragon City shook slightly, but Lin Feng was sitting on Yujing Mountain and was calm, so they could not act rashly. After a moment of silence, Liang Pan and Stonefeather both sent out their divine senses. Dao Master Chang'e and the other cultivators of the Great Qin Empire also landed on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Tide Listening Sword Venerable, Devouring Sun Great Saint, and the others also flew to Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Seeing that Lin Feng did not mind, they entered the ancient formation that protected the Immortal Mountain. A group of cultivators also flew out of the Grand Imperial Palace. They were all cultivators under the command of the Great Zhou Empire. Among them were Xiao Huayang and the other cultivators of the Eastern Heavenly Gate who were left behind. They were brought along by the Grand Imperial Palace. However, what made people surprised was that the leader of this group of cultivators was neither a famous essence soul powerhouse of the Great Zhou Empire nor a cultivator of the Eastern Heavenly Gate. Instead, it was a middle-aged man with Buddhist light flashing around him. Chapter 761. Although they didn't communicate with each other, Lin Feng, Liang Pan, and Shiryu had a tacit understanding with each other. They limited the cultivators who went to Yingzhou Spirit Mountain to the 3rd level of the Essence Soul Realm. Xianmen Tianzong didn't have any Essence Soul Realm cultivators, but Zhu Yi defeated Xiao Qingcheng, who was in the 1st level of the Essence Soul Realm, in the late stage of the Yuanying. Apart from Dao Master Chang'e, there was another expert in the 2nd level of the Essence Soul Realm in the Great Qin Dynasty's camp. He was Emperor Qin Shiyu's younger brother, Shilin. King Jingfang of the Great Qin Dynasty was a pillar of the royal family like King Anliang Shizongyue. King Jingfang Shilin leaped down from the Immortal Dragon City and led the team into the ancient formation outside Yingzhou Spirit Mountain with Dao Master Chang'e. On the other hand, on the side of the Great Zhou Dynasty, there was a monk who looked like a middle-aged man surrounded by Buddhist light. Everyone could tell that he was a direct disciple of Buddhism. Not only was he proficient in the Tao, but he also had deep attainments in the Buddhist Dharma. As soon as he appeared, Shilin, Dao Master Chang'e, and even Sword Venerable Tidehark had a complicated expression on their faces. Da Kong, the middle-aged monk smiled. It's been a while, benefactors. He didn't say anything else. He came to Sword Venerable Tidehark and put his palms together. Then, he led the people of the Great Zhou Dynasty and Songhai Sword Sect down to Yingzhou Spirit Mountain. Apart from the cultivators of other forces, even Sword Venerable Tidehark and those in his own force who had heard of him looked at him with a complicated expression. Lin Feng glanced at Monk Dakong, then shifted his gaze to the Grand Imperial Palace. He couldn't help but smile. He thought to himself, you've even sent this person. The Great Zhou Dynasty has really turned out in full force this time. Monk Dakong was of the same generation as Monk Dade. However, he joined the sect later than Monk Dade, but his cultivation was higher than Monk Dade's. He was also a rising star that the Great Lane Temple focused on. When he first joined the sect, he was accepted as a personal disciple by the previous elder of the Great Lane Temple. After he cultivated the Rulai Dharma body and reached the 2nd level of the Buddhist Golden Body, he became the head of the Bodhi court and became a high-level member of the Great Lane Temple. However, after the Buddha vanquishing battle, Monk Dakong joined the Great Zhou Dynasty. Although this was a secret and the cultivators with low cultivation did not know about it, it was not a secret among the primordial spirit powerhouses. However, Dakong had been living in seclusion and had not appeared in front of anyone since the Buddha vanquishing battle. Lin Feng also knows that this monk with a face full of peace and tranquility, who has seen his heart and nature, is a key figure in the battle to destroy the Buddha. The key to the destruction of the Great Thunder Monastery back then was the Void Temple's silence. They even used the Great Formation breaking drum to help the Allied forces destroy the Great Thunder Monastery's Vairocana formation, which was equivalent to expressing their attitude. The Taeans. They off the other forces with that Taishu Tang Wu Sekmu had not done. According to what Lin Feng knew, Monk Dakong wasn't a spy planted by the Great Zhou dynasty or other forces in the Great Lane Temple. However, he could still live well in the Great Zhou dynasty after the battle. Obviously, it wasn't as simple as him joining the Great Zhou dynasty. It seemed that this person knew some secrets of the Great Lane Temple and revealed it to the Taishu Tang. That was why Taishu Tang acquiesced to the battle of Buddhism. Lin Feng observed Monk Dakong carefully. He could feel that he was at ease. He didn't feel guilty for betraying his sect and joining the enemy. It was as if the battle of Buddhism was a matter of course to him. Since he wasn't a spy planted by the Great Zhou dynasty, Taishu Tang, or other forces in the Great Lane Temple, it meant that he didn't have other thoughts about Buddhism. Under such circumstances, he supported the battle of Buddhism. It seemed to have a deep meaning. Maybe, in his eyes, what he did wasn't to exterminate Buddhism, but to exterminate the other disciples of Buddhism who had deviated from the right path of Buddhism in his heart and fell into the evil path. Lin Feng quietly pondered in his heart, having some vague thoughts, just like how the Void Temple is divided into conservatives and radicals. Back then the Great Thunder Temple also didn't seem to be a monolithic block internally. Towards the understanding of Buddhism and the direction of their own sect, there were quite a few divergences. Lin Feng thought for a while and shook his head with a smile. The system notification sound kept ringing in his ears. He looked back and forth between the Taishu Palace and Monk Dakong. He then sent a message to Zhu Yi and the others who were about to enter the formation. Little E, pay attention to the monk who is leading the Great Zhou dynasty. After listening to Lin Feng's explanation of Monk Dakong's situation, Zhu Yi's eyes flickered. If we can capture this person, we might be able to find out the true story of the battle of Buddhism. However, his primordial soul second returned to emptiness state cultivation base. I can't do anything to him without becoming a primordial soul. Lin Feng smiled. It's okay. I have a basic idea about the battle of Buddhism. You don't have to fight to the death with him. You should pay attention to him. I'm afraid he has a lot of Sariras with him. Oh. Zhu Yi nodded. I understand. All these years, the few of them traveled outside and found some scattered Sariras. However, compared to the total number, it was not even 1/10 of the total. At that time, Lin Feng deduced that after Great Thunderclap Monastery was wiped out, most of the Sariras had fallen into the hands of Great Zhou Empire. After meeting Grand Imperial Palace and Monk Dakong, the system's notifications rang out non-stop beside Lin Feng's ears, which verified this point. There was definitely a large amount of Sariras in Grand Imperial Palace. Now that Grand Imperial Palace had been restored, it wasn't far from its peak. Other than Yude Minghua, Great Zhou Empire had also invested a large amount of resources, which should include large amounts of Buddhist treasures and Sariras. And this Monk Dakong also had Sariras on him. You are an interesting monk. Since you are on the righteous path of Buddhism, you don't have any reverence for the Sariras of the predecessors. You don't mind that Great Zhou Empire used the Sariras to refine magic treasures, and you don't have any psychological barrier when you use them yourself. It wasn't like Lin Feng hadn't seen Buddhist cultivators who had refined the Sariras of their ancestors into magic treasures. However, no matter if it was Hui Ku or Yuan Xiang, even though they had refined the Sariras, they were still suffering in their hearts. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Your Dharma name is Dakong. Could it be that you have already reached the realm of seeing emptiness as emptiness and having no dust as a mirror? Even many almighty experts of Buddhism who had reached the third tier of the golden body realm might not be able to do it. If that's really the case, you aren't far from the realm of Buddha's non-living golden body statue. The people who had followed Lin Feng all the way to Yingzhou Celestial Mountain, Zhanghai Sword Sect had followed Great Zhou Empire into the ancient formation. Great Qin Empire's Dao Venerable Changlu, Shi Xingyun, and the rest had also followed King Jingfang Shi Lin. As for the demon race, Great Sage Devouring Sun and his golden-winged rock demon race, as well as the dragon race led by Crimson Thunder Dragon King, they had retreated and escaped far away. With the three great treasures of Jade Capital Mountain, Immortal Dragon City, and Grand Imperial Palace pressing down on them, if they didn't know their place and headed to Yingzhou Celestial Mountain, they would probably be crushed into powder immediately. Be it due to the conflict between the human race and the demon race, or the consideration of reducing competitors, Lin Feng, Stonefeather, and Liang Pan didn't mind cooperating with the demon race under the premise of being wary of each other. Once such a lineup joined forces, even if Great Sage Golden Rock and Dragon King of the Purple Sea came together, they would have to shrink back, let alone Great Sage Devouring Sun and Crimson Thunder Dragon King. Crimson Thunder Dragon King stared expressionlessly at Grand Imperial Palace and Immortal Dragon City. These two creation Dharma treasures of human race cultivators, no matter which one it was, had a deep-seated hatred with the dragon race. In the primordial era, the primordial celestial dragon race was the ruler of the world. Not to mention the human race, even the other demon races prostrated themselves under the dragon race's rule. At that time, the demon race's sacred emperor was the leader of the primordial celestial dragon race, primordial dragon Xian Shang, also known as the absolute primordial dragon. Hence, Xian Shang was also known as the absolute emperor. Primordial dragon Xian Shang and his wife, ancestral dragon Sang Ning, gave birth to the primordial celestial dragon race together, becoming the ancestor of the dragon race. Later on, the human race rose to power, and the first human emperor, Emperor Shi Huang, led the human race's experts to rebel against the demon race's rule. At the very beginning of the rebellion, other demon races that were dissatisfied with the dragon race's rule secretly helped them, giving the human race the opportunity to develop and get through the earliest and most difficult times. In the end, in a great battle, ancestral dragon Sang Ning was surrounded and killed. Emperor Shi Huang used Sang Ning's remains as raw material, fusing the human race's power concept of unity and protection into a creation Dharma treasure. This was the origin of the name Immortal Dragon City. Unfortunately, before the Dharma treasure was refined, Emperor Shi Huang was killed by the furious primordial dragon Xian Shang. However, the tide of the human race's rise was already unstoppable. One after another, human experts stood up, one after another, until the final battle of the primordial era. The heaven primordial world was split into two worlds, the divine land and the infinite wasteland vast land. The primordial era came to an end. After entering the primordial era, the Taishu Taoist activated the Haotian mirror, and the Grand Emperor controlled the Grand Imperial Palace to kill absolute sovereign Xian Shang and a large number of dragon experts, completely ending the dragon race's rule. Although the dragon race still dominated one of the heaven primordial seven seas, the Black Sea, and was the strongest faction among the demon race, compared to when they ruled the heavens and all races submitted to them, the difference was like heaven and earth. Therefore, at this moment, the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King even closed his eyes. Otherwise, he might not be able to control his emotions. To the dragon race, the Immortal Dragon City and the Grand Imperial Palace, the former was a great humiliation, while the latter was a blood feud. Seeing the Scarlet Thunder Dragon King leave, Lin Feng frowned slightly. After thinking for a while, he let his Iron Tree clone follow. As for his main body, most of his attention was on the Grand Imperial Palace and the Immortal Dragon City. Treasures of creation were the same as Mahayana grade treasures. They could unleash their own great power independently, but compared to Mahayana grade treasures, the spirit of a treasure of creation was much larger. It was almost the will of the world, and it was basically connected to the great Tao of creation of the entire heaven primordial world. Instead, it would not show itself, and most of the time, it would not move freely. It was like a complete and real world that stood there silently. It would not be as active as humans or animals. As long as one could obtain the recognition of a treasure of creation, a cultivator with a lower cultivation realm could also activate the great power of the treasure of creation. However, the difference in cultivation realm would cause the treasure's feedback to be different. It was just like how an early-stage golden elixir cultivator could only use their own magic power, while an intermediate-stage golden elixir cultivator could directly absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Different cultivation realms meant different understandings of the great Tao of heaven and earth. Naturally, the feedback from the great Tao of heaven and earth would also be different. Therefore, after Emperor Zhou Liangpan successfully fused with the Tao and activated the Grand Imperial Palace, which had mostly recovered, Stonefeather could not do anything to it even if he controlled the immortal dragon city. If Liangpan was still at the return to void stage, he would not be afraid of the immortal dragon city even if he controlled the Grand Imperial Palace, but he might not be able to suppress the immortal dragon city like before. In that case, after observing Liangpan and the Grand Imperial Palace, Lin Feng had a deeper understanding of treasures of creation. He made up his mind. I don't need to change my previous plan. I'll just go with the original plan for now. Chapter 762. Liangpan and Stonefeather noticed that Lin Feng's Iron Tree clone had secretly left to follow the Crimson Thunder Dragon King. However, they did not pay much attention to it. Most of their attention was on Lin Feng's main body and Jade Capital Mountain. Apart from that, they also separated a portion of their divine senses to secretly pay attention to Lin Feng's Iron Tree clone, in case something unexpected happened. However, Lin Feng had already made arrangements for this. The Iron Tree clone was indeed following the Crimson Thunder Dragon King on the surface because Lin Feng vaguely felt that something was wrong with the other party. However, there was another purpose in the dark. It was to attract Liangpan and Stonefeather's attention, so that they could secretly sneak in. Magical talismans gathered together and wrapped around a figure, as well as the world-breaking stone and the heavenly turtle golden pearl. Then, the figure turned into an inconspicuous dim spot of light. While Liangpan and Stonefeather were slightly distracted by the Iron Tree clone, the figure quietly descended Jade Jing Mountain. The talismans formed a mysterious array. Under the cover, even Liangpan and Stonefeather did not discover it. The plan of deceiving the heavens was a preliminary success. Lin Feng smiled inwardly, that's why I have to focus on mastering the new Dharma technique. That's why I rushed to Yingxi. As the old saying goes, sharpening the axe will not delay the work of cutting firewood. If Liangpan and Stonefeather were fully focused and merged with their creation treasures, it would be hard to say whether they would discover it or not. However, now that they were slightly distracted, the speck of light that was like a speck of dust had already disappeared among the clouds of Yingxi. Although they could not really find any traces, Liangpan and Stonefeather's hearts skipped a beat at the same time. Their instincts told them that the situation seemed to be developing in a direction that was disadvantageous to them. However, the Tao of space-time, causality, and fate was shrouded in fog. They could not see clearly with their cultivation. They only felt that something was wrong, but the source of this feeling was not easy to identify. For Stonefeather, it could be from Liangpan, Lin Feng, or someone else who had entered Yingxi. For Liangpan, it was the same situation. However, compared to Lin Feng's confident appearance, Liangpan and Stonefeather were more inclined to believe that the problem lay with Lin Feng. What did he do? Liangpan frowned slightly. His mind connected with his doppelganger on the faraway Fangzhang Immortal Mountain. He continued to search for Penglai Immortal Mountain while keeping his guard up. After Zhu Hongguo, who was also on Mount Fangzhang, heard Liangpan's clone's report of the situation, his brows also twitched. He said in a low voice, "Your Majesty, you suddenly felt something." It shouldn't be a coincidence. Liang nodded and said, "We have to find Mount Penglai, but we can't be impatient. We can slow down. It doesn't matter even if we wait until the next time the three mountains appear. As long as the great Zhou dynasty occupies Mount Fangzhang, we will always have an advantageous position in the Battle of Yingxi. If we find Mount Penglai, Hongguo, you will be in charge of collecting it. My clone will drive Mount Fangzhong and be on guard in case of any unexpected situations. Zhu Hongwu replied, subject obeys the imperial decree. After arranging the matters of Mount Penglai and Mount Fangzhong, Liang Pan focused his attention back on Lin Feng and Stone Feather. At the same time, he paid attention to the situation of Mount Penglai below. Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, Monk Dekong, King Jingfeng of the Great Qin, Wang Shilin, and the others had already officially entered the ancient formation of the Immortal Mountain. When they landed on the huge jade boards, Zhu Yi and the others immediately felt the scene in front of them change slightly. It was as if they were immersed in water. The waves swayed, and most importantly, they couldn't hear any sound. Everything in front of them turned into a mixture of black and white. Everything had lost its color. Fortunately, their divine senses could still be transmitted, and magic power transmission was also not affected. After carefully analyzing the mysteries of the formation, Zhu Yi took out the Li Qing jade set. Senior Qing-like, you entered this formation with Tao Master Jin Wan before. Now that we want to break the formation, we also need your experience. The Li Qing jade set emitted spiritual power fluctuations and turned into a voice that rang in the ears of Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, and the others. This formation was born of heaven and earth and is accompanied by Mount Yingzhou. The human cultivation world of the divine land generally refers to it as the nameless ancient formation. This formation is now extremely weak. It can only deprive me of color and sound. When I entered the formation with Tao Master Jin Wan, my 5 senses, including sight, touch, and hearing, were all deprived. Only my subconscious can still move, and my divine sense can still operate and explore. The Li Qing jade set had now been refined by Lin Feng. It regarded Lin Feng as its master and called its former master by the honorific title of Tao Master Jin Wan, just like Zhu Yi and the others. But even so, my divine sense has been severely weakened, and the range it can extend is extremely limited. Qing-like continued, this formation is even fused with the layers of illusions of the Yingxi. When our perception is severely damaged, it is very easy for us to fall into the illusions. Tao Master Jin Wan fell into the illusions because of this and died. Zhu Yi and the others nodded. After the exploration of generations of experts, the nameless ancient formation at the periphery of Mount Yingzhou had become famous. It was rumored that in ancient times, when the 3 mountains of Yingxi had just appeared, the power of the nameless ancient formation was at its peak. It could even deprive a cultivator of their divine sense and consciousness. Once a cultivator entered the ancient formation, they would immediately be unable to think, speak, think, or move. It was as if they had entered a state of suspended animation. In a situation where there were many other dangers, such suspended animation was no different from real death, and they would soon lose their lives. Later on, the Grand Emperor had attacked the nameless ancient formation and heavily injured it, greatly weakening the ancient formation. Only then did the people who entered the formation not have their consciousness deprived. Only if their consciousness was not deprived could they have other follow-up methods to study how to break the formation. As a result, the people who entered the formation continued to attack it, causing the nameless ancient formation to become weaker and weaker. Qing-like continued, based on my previous experience of entering the formation with Tao Master Jin Wan and being trapped in the formation, only to be able to escape because someone else tried to break the formation, the method of breaking this nameless ancient formation is different from breaking ordinary formations. The formation's eye is the immortal mountain of Yingzhou that is surrounded by the formation. If you can't break the formation, you won't be able to touch the mountain at all, so it's useless to find the formation's eye. The materials used to set up the formation are not fixed, but the layers of illusions in this Yingxi. When Li Yuanfang heard this, his eyes flickered slightly. To break this formation, you can either destroy it from the outside with absolute strength like what the Grand Emperor Palace did earlier, or you can use the most ancient method to break the formation, which is to analyze the formation's patterns. A long time ago, when the Tao techniques of the human race and the demon race were still in the ascendant, there were already array formations. However, these array formations were not deduced by cultivators or great demons according to their own cultivation methods. Instead, they were created after analyzing the natural array formations like the nameless ancient array formation in Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. It was just like how the most primitive humans would sometimes imitate animals and carry out bionics. The birth and development of formations had also gone through such a process in the earliest days. After analyzing natural ancient formations and sorting out the principles of heaven and earth contained within, they would integrate and perfect the cultivator's own Tao technique, and then simulate it. After that, be it the human race or the demon race, with the development of time, the Tao techniques they grasped became more and more prosperous and profound. Only then did they completely break away from the shadow of imitating natural ancient formations. Instead, they could use their own Tao technique as a foundation to deduce brand new formations and use the tremendous power of heaven and earth as they wished. Qing gave a definite answer. That's right. If you want to completely break this ancient formation, you need to completely analyze the formation's patterns. He pointed at Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, and the others and said, according to my experience, this ancient formation is actually not a ball, but a giant loop. It only became what it is now because of the distortion of space. Zhu Yi turned to look at Li Yuanfang. Sixth junior brother, what do you think? Li Yuanfang was not in a hurry to answer. Instead, he squinted his eyes and studied the formation. After a careful calculation in his mind, he answered, second senior brother, we can split up and meet again at the end. We can consolidate our gains and summarize them. It'll be faster this way. That's what I think too. Zhu Yi nodded. This formation distorts space. Even if we split up and meet each other in a semicircle, we won't have to worry about running into the cultivators of other forces. It's just like Master's purple chi maze. The people who enter the ancient formation in stages will be in overlapping yet independent space planes. If we don't break the formation, Monk Great Void and King Jingfang won't be able to break through the distortion of space and time to meet us. In this way, even if we split up, your safety will be guaranteed. Lin Feng's purple chi maze had been used for the first time when a foundation disciple was promoted to a true teaching disciple. He had also used it later on. After Zhu Yi and the others' cultivations became more profound, they could also simulate and recreate it. Therefore, Li Yuanfang also knew the principle behind it. The two of them made up their minds, but it left Qing slightly dazed. Zhu Yi's decision to split up implied that he and Li Yuanfang would each lead a team. Qing had no doubts about Zhu Yi's cultivation, but Li Yuanfang, who only had an early-stage golden elixir cultivation, left him slightly dazed. Jia Yu and White Light also revealed puzzled expressions. Previously, they had been in seclusion for a long period of time, so their understanding of Li Yuanfang was limited. They only knew that this dark-skinned and unassuming youth was also Lin Feng's personal disciple. In the Divine Land, those below the nascent divinity stage, including our own brothers and sisters in Xianmen Tianzong, there are no more than 5 people who can defeat my 6th junior brother in the art of formations. As if he had seen through Qing and the others' puzzlement, Zhu Yi said indifferently, even among nascent divinity stage cultivators, there are many who are not adept in formations. These people are inferior to my 6th junior brother in the art of formations. Qing and Jia Yu looked at Li Yuanfang in shock. Whether they had known him for a long time or a short time, they could tell that Zhu Yi was not a person who would lie or exaggerate. But even so, what he said was a little too shocking. On the other hand, Li Yuanfang was neither arrogant nor humble. Instead, he looked at Zhu Yi very seriously. The Qin dynasty and the Zhou dynasty both have nascent divinity stage cultivators after all. It is unknown whether there are people who are adept in formations among them. In order to save time and further increase our speed, second senior brother, please execute the Dragon Ascension technique and lend me a hand. Zhu Yi nodded. Even if you didn't say it, I had the same intention. After saying that, he immediately made a hand seal, and the silhouette of an azure dragon appeared in the air. With a mighty dragon roar, it coiled around Li Yuanfang's body. Chapter 763. The azure dragon silhouette circled around Li Yuanfang's body. Its formidable power resonated with Li Yuanfang's own transcendence energy, forming a profound concept of constantly advancing. The azure dragon silhouette outside Li Yuanfang's body entangled with the patterns of light gushing out of his body, turning into a halo that circulated silently. Qing-like, Jiayu, and white light immediately sensed that Li Yuanfang's essence, qi, and spirit had been greatly enhanced. This feeling, mid-stage golden elixir. Qing-like was slightly dazed. He was a magic treasure's origin spirit, and mid-stage golden elixir cultivators were not worth mentioning to him at all. However, Li Yuanfang had clearly been at the early stage golden elixir, but under the effect of Zhu Yi's dragon ascension art, he had actually risen to the mid-stage golden elixir. This change greatly interested him. In the long history of the heaven primal world, both humans and demons had secret arts that could temporarily enhance one's cultivation. However, most of them had side effects, and they could basically only be used on oneself, not others. It was not impossible for nascent divinity powerhouses or Yuaniing patriarchs to help a golden elixir period cultivator improve in a short period of time, but for the golden elixir period cultivator themselves, it was akin to pulling a seedling up to hasten its growth, and there were side effects. Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang came from the same sect, and there was no conflict between them. Naturally, he would not harm Li Yuanfang. Although he had to hurry to break the nameless ancient formation, he was not in such a hurry that he had to use a method that had huge side effects. Qing-like carefully sensed the transcendence energy undulations around Li Yuanfang and the movement of his spirit. Soon, he discovered that Zhu Yi's method had no side effects on Li Yuanfang at all. If he had to point out a flaw, it would be that, like other methods that could temporarily enhance one's cultivation, it had a time limit. Qing-like could vaguely sense that as time passed, the dragon ascension art would gradually fade away, but after its transcendence energy dissipated, Li Yuanfang's cultivation would return to the original early-stage golden elixir. Zhu Yi turned to look at the wide-eyed Jia Yu and white light couple. This method can only be used on others, it's useless on myself. With my current cultivation base, I can only help cultivators below the nascent divinity realm. Jia Yu, you are already at the late stage of the Demon King realm. I am unable to help you advance to the level of the immortal demon soul. However, your wife can advance to the late stage of the Demon King realm. However, this technique can only take effect once for a certain period of time for the same person, and it can't be used consecutively. Therefore, I'm thinking of upgrading your wife after we break the array and officially explore the Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. Jia Yu and White Light both nodded. Zhu Yi then passed Qing-like's jade table to Li Yuanfang. The two of you, along with senior Qing-like and sixth junior brother, mainly protect him from being injured by the illusions of the formation. The matter of breaking the formation can be left to sixth junior brother. I'll go alone. Let's split up. Although the nameless ancient formation was already very weak and did not possess great destructive power, it was connected to the layers of illusions of the Yingzhou Immortal Sea. Under the effect of the ancient formation, the perception of those who entered the formation was still greatly weakened. There was no light, no sound, and it was very easy to fall into the illusions. Once one fell into it, it would be very dangerous. Qing-like did not decline and thought to herself, I've also stayed in this nameless ancient formation before. If this sixth disciple of Master can't break the formation or is too slow, I can also lend him a hand to avoid any delays. But very soon, Qing-like realized that her worries were completely unnecessary. The first formation pattern, Yin advances and Yang retreats, Binggu advances Jiazi, Yiwei advances Guichen. The second formation pattern, Yin retreats and Yang advances, Dingxi advances Rinqiu, Gengmao advances Binghai. The formation pattern is too primitive. The heavenly stems and earthly branches method is too complicated to calculate, so I'll use the Halua numbering method instead. Li Yuanfang walked forward with a calm expression. He spoke very quickly, but enunciated his words clearly. He was not talking to Qing-like and the others, but was purely talking to himself out of habit when he was deducing the formation. The first group of 10 formation patterns, the center does not move, and the left rotates to generate each other. The first, third, fifth, seventh, and ninth formation patterns produce yang qi. The seventh formation pattern is abnormal. The second earth produces fire, and the seventh heaven produces it. If the seventh heaven fails, the second earth does not produce it. The second, fourth, sixth, eighth, and 10th formation patterns produce death. Now that the second formation pattern is missing, we can begin to break the death gate formation from here. The second group of 10 formation patterns, the center does not move, and the left rotates to generate each other. The first, third, fifth, seventh, and ninth formation patterns produce yang qi. The first formation pattern is abnormal. The first heaven produces water, and the sixth earth does not produce it. If the first heaven fails, the sixth earth does not produce it. The second, fourth, sixth, eighth, and 10th formation patterns produce death. Now that the sixth formation pattern is missing, we can begin to break the death gate formation from here. The third group of 10 formation patterns, the fourth group of 10 formation patterns, Li Yuanfang's footsteps did not stop along the way. To him, because the power of the nameless ancient formation had been weakened, he did not need to divert his attention to resist the formation's invasion. He could simply deduce the formation's changes. As long as he had a good start and figured out the patterns within, his speed of breaking the formation would become faster and faster. Although the nameless ancient formation was fused with various illusory powers, with Qing-like, Jiayu, and white light watching over it, Li Yuanfang did not need to divert his attention. Qing-like and the other two looked at him. Apart from being shocked, they also felt that it was only natural. Inside the nameless ancient formation, although Li Yuanfang's expression was calm, his eyes were faintly sparkling. To others, the formation was complicated, difficult, and boring, but he enjoyed it and was filled with interest. Inside the formation, Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, and the others seemed to be in an independent space. From the point of view of Lin Feng and the others outside the formation, it was as if the tens of thousands of jade plates that shrouded the immortal mountain of immortal abode had been pieced together, as if the ground was paved with neat rectangular bricks. At this moment, the innumerable jade plates began to move incessantly. Amidst the chaos, there was a strange sense of beauty. Today, with the nameless ancient formation greatly weakened, whether it was Lin Feng, Liang Pan, or Stone Feather, it would not take much effort for them to break the formation. However, in comparison, it would definitely be faster to use Yujing Mountain, the Grand Imperial Palace, or the Immortal Dragon City to crush them with brute force. If it were not for the other two clans eyeing them covetously from the side, even Lin Feng would not mind using a less troublesome method to deal with it. After all, he was not as obsessed with formations as Li Yuanfang. However, the current situation was actually very good. Lin Feng was very confident in his disciple's auspicious ability. In particular, it was not only Zhu Yi who had arrived, but the second one had also arrived. Xiao Yan, Xiao Zhen, Yang Qing, Kuei Niu King, and Sea Spirit Chariot King had also arrived in the sky above Yingzhou Immortal Mountain. With a thought from Lin Feng, he had already explained the matter to them using his transcendence energy. At the same time, Xiao Yan had also clearly explained what he had seen and heard. When he heard that there was a monk who had manifested the Buddha's Dharmakaya, Lin Feng nodded slightly and did not speak. After everything was explained, Xiao Yan and the others cupped their hands towards Lin Feng and landed on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain below. Liang Pan and Stone Feather did not object, although they had noticed that Xiao Yan had already reached the late stage of yuanying. Comparing the strength of Zhu Yi's late stage of yuanying, it was not difficult to imagine that the current Xiao Yan could also not be measured by the standard of yuanying cultivators. However, it was impossible for them to stop Xiao Yan and the others from entering. That would be too petty, and it would make them look even more cowardly. Now, they could only hope that Monk Dekong, King Jingfang, and Stone Feather would not let them down. However, Xiao Yan and the others were slower than Zhu Yi, Monk Dekong, and Stone Feather by a period of time. If they wanted to break the nameless ancient formation and ascend Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, they would be much later. Their starting point was too slow. The nameless ancient formation was different from the illusions that Lin Feng had broken earlier. The formation would not disappear directly if one person broke the formation. As the eye of the formation was Yingzhou Immortal Mountain, it could not be broken completely. The geographical spiritual qi used to build the formation also came from the illusions of the Yinghai Immortal Mountain. Unless Lin Feng and the others destroyed it forcefully from the outside, it would not disappear. Therefore, Xiao Yan and the others could not enjoy the fruits of Zhu Yi and Li Yuanfang's efforts. They could only rely on themselves. As time passed, the sphere-like jade plates on Yingzhou Immortal Mountain formed a complete ring and suddenly stopped. Then, it shone with a dazzling brilliance. Within the nameless ancient formation, Zhu Yi advanced calmly. A huge tortoise shadow hovered in the air like a small island. The spirit tortoise's eyes were calm like the vast ocean. On the tortoise's back, there were millions or even billions of light-patterned talismans that were constantly being destroyed and reborn. They were like bubbles in the ocean, rising and falling. These talismans and words constantly combined without stopping. However, from afar, it seemed like a huge 8 trigrams diagram. Through his myriad manifestations art of repatriation, the speed at which Zhu Yi broke the nameless ancient formation was even faster than Li Yuanfang. After all, his cultivation was more than a major realm higher than Li Yuanfang's, so he was more sensitive to the flow of spiritual qi in the formation. As he walked, Zhu Yi suddenly stopped and smiled. The colorless water before him rippled with a mixture of black and white, and Li Yuanfang and the others walked out. As soon as they saw each other, the two of them could not be bothered to exchange pleasantries. They immediately summarized the changes that they had derived and verified each other. After completely understanding the changes, Zhu Yi nodded. "I'll do it." Li Yuanfang had no objections. In a situation where they were both familiar with the changes in the formation, Zhu Yi's cultivation was higher, so his chances of breaking the formation were obviously higher. Zhu Yi's hands formed a seal on his abdomen. It was agile and solemn at the same time, simple and profound. The eyes of the huge spirit tortoise above his head suddenly shone with light. It was peaceful and distant, constantly stirring up the wave-like space. Under the influence of the spirit tortoise's gaze, the space they were in seemed to be boiling water, constantly fluctuating. Huge bubble-like objects exploded before Zhu Yi and the others one after another. Colors began to appear in the space once again, and rumbling sounds rang out by their ears. Finally, the entire space seemed to shatter. The scenery before their eyes changed. They had already left the nameless ancient formation and arrived on an immortal island that seemed like a continent. Stepping on the ground, they sensed the abundant spiritual qi on the island and experienced the laws of the world. Zhu Yi confirmed that they were not in an illusion, but had actually stepped onto the immortal mountain of Yingzhou. "It's actually so easy. This feels far too unreal," a voice rang out from the jade table. His tone was filled with disbelief. Zhu Yi smiled and said, "The ancestors plant trees, and the descendants benefit from the shade. Previously, there were too many people attacking the nameless ancient formation, causing its power to be extremely weak. Just taking away its color and sound doesn't have much effect on us breaking the formation. A formation that has lost its offensive power is no longer dangerous. It's like a dying person that can only watch as we analyze the changes in the formation and find a way to break it." Li Yuanfang said, "By the same logic, even if others aren't skilled in formations, they won't take too long to break it. We might be the first batch to break it, but we have to hurry." Zhu Yi looked at the vast immortal mountain before him. "Let's go." You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.